Three choices, one bullet, one trigger. Guess who gets the bullet? One leader, 1,000.
You're listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, we're discussing Head, Chest, or Foot, track 2 on 1993's How to Clean Everything.
Hey, Keith, how are you feeling about our third How to Clean Everything song? We're finally doing more How to Clean Everything, and I'm super pumped. How do you feel?
Well, one, I feel behind, as you said, because it's only the third. And I'm also pretty eager to learn more about the record itself, because I think from a production standpoint and just background, history, trivia side of it, it's by far the album I know the least about.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that we're going to get a lot of messages in the comments on Twitter and Instagram and in email. So we love hearing from everybody out there. So definitely don't be shy and let us know some interesting tidbits that you know, because that's one of my favorite things is being like, oh my gosh, I also know this after we've done an episode. And I'm like, holy smokes. And then I'll sometimes make tweets that sort of amend what we've talked about on the show. And I'll say, right. Oh, hey, a listener sent in this. So send in your random tidbits on our How to Clean Everything episode, because it's been a while. But somehow between some of these records, we've done like 6 tracks from already, like Failed States. We've done like half of it, right. And we're finally doing our third How to Clean Everything song. But we also managed to somehow do 170 minutes of content on Ska Sucks. So this is really an exercise in hilarity at this point. And I almost just kind of wanted to keep it going, like not do any How to Clean Everything for like months and months and just see if anybody really said anything.
Don't do the next episode until the next propaganda album came out and cover that first somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. So, here we go, doing more How to Clean Everything. Third song, we did Showdown, we did Ska Sucks, and now we're getting into what I personally see as more of like the heart of the record.
Sure, yeah.
Like the first 3 tracks here are just so crucial on this album. But I was looking through some information on How to Clean Everything. And from the liner notes of How to Clean Everything, it was engineered by Donald Cameron and somebody who named Joe, whose surname is not identified in the liner notes, in February of 1993. And I just was picturing these guys from Winnipeg, Manitoba, going from Winnipeg to Los Angeles in 1993 in February. And I don't know about you, but I bet they were super disappointed to go to LA in February from Manitoba. Yeah. And I also saw that the cover art was made by a figure known as H.R. Geiger. It says that in the liner notes.
I never noticed that before. And if you don't know that name, that's the science fiction artist who created the xenomorph design for the Alien movies. So clearly just a goofy, nerdy Easter egg there, which I, again, never noticed that until today.
Yeah. And I am such a dummy that I had it down. I was like, oh yeah, H.R. Geiger. Okay. Typing it, like writing some notes up here. So I was just totally oblivious to this fact, which I think is super funny. But apparently John Yates did the 1993 layout for the original LP, and Sergei Lubkov from Sam I Am and Slapped Together Creative Design did the 2013 20th anniversary reissue layout. And I'm sure that there are many Sam I Am fans listening to this. They are an incredible band. One of my favorites. The album Astray is one of my all-time favorite records. But it only says Sergei on the inside of the liner notes. And so I looked up Sergei Lubkov's website and sent him an email this morning. And I said, I presume that you are the Sergei listed on the inside of How to Clean Everything. Tell me about what you did. So he writes me back like in an hour.
Oh, great.
It was amazing. And I asked him what he did for the redesign. And here's what he said. He said, When labels need to do represses from old records, they often hire me to redesign the art from scans of the album, CD, or films. Sometimes they have old, corrupted, backed up files, and I need to try and figure out if I can open them and recreate from scratch or with help of online images. I do this pretty regularly for Epitaph and Fat. It's fun for me, often like a puzzle, but in Photoshop. So I thought that was so cool because
Yeah.
I've been listening to Sam I Am for decades at this point. And here I am just casually emailing back and forth with the guitar player from Sam I Am talking about his business, Slapped Together Creative Design, which everybody can go to slappedtogether.com and look at Sergi's vast catalog of packaging and artwork designs. And obviously go listen to Sam I Am because they're one of the greatest freaking bands ever. I think that the singer from Sam I Am is truly one of the great vocalists in punk rock music ever. So that was a really cool moment I had, was emailing back and forth with Sergi about the redesign for the How to Clean Everything 2013 reissue. And speaking of which, on August 20th, 2013, the album was re-released from Fat on CD, green vinyl, and light blue and white vinyl with the songs Pigs Will Pay, Homophobes Are Just Mad 'Cause They Can't Get Laid, and Leg Hold Trap, plus 4 original demos, which was a really cool reissue. Did you buy that reissue when it came out in 2013?
No, I still don't have a copy of it.
I've got mine right here. Here's the reissue. I've even got the shrink wrapping still around it. Just I sliced into the record, but I've still got it wrapped up. But it's a really cool reissue and sounds great. And I also did a ton of digging to see where this super old track, Head, Chest, or Foot, appears elsewhere. And there are several spots where this song appears that listeners might not know about. Head, Chest, or Foot was also track 3 on the B side of the 1991 7-inch compilation called Kung Fu Daniel from Birth magazine, which featured Sockeye, John Bartles, and Propaganda. And the compilation was hand numbered and limited to 500 copies. I've seen pictures of that compilation, that 7-inch, on Instagram a couple times, and it's really super cool. And if you aren't fortunate enough to have one of these, the entirety of the comp can be listened to on YouTube. I think I sent that to you today, didn't I?
Yeah, I give it a spin.
Yeah, and the Propaganda tracks on the Kung Fu Daniel compilation were recorded on a 4-track in Chris's basement, according to Discogs. Maybe that's not correct. I'm not really sure. But it looks like there are gray, green, and pink versions of that 1991 Kung Fu Daniel Birth magazine comp. So if anybody's selling, give me a holler, hook me up, because I am looking. But I thought that was really neat that an old version of Head, Chest, or Foot appears on a 1991 7-inch compilation, a couple years before How to Clean Everything. I mean, that's pretty cool, because this song, goes so far back in their history as a band. I mean, we're only talking about 5 years into the life of the band in total when Head, Chest, or Foot appears on that Kung Fu Daniel compilation. And there's also another 7-inch. I don't know if you've ever heard this one. Have you seen this 7-inch before?
That I've seen the image floating around with the Calvin and Hobbes cover.
Yeah, so I got my copy here of the bootleg. I think it came out in 98, but it's Propaganda Reclaim the Streets 7-inch. And it has Calvin and Hobbes artwork on the front and back, which Bill Watterson is extremely protective of the imagery surrounding Calvin and Hobbes. So this is not an authorized thing under any normal circumstances, I'm sure. But Head, Chest, or Foot is track 2 on the A side of the Reclaim the Streets bootleg 7-inch. It also features Ska Sucks, which I refuse to talk about anymore on this podcast. No, I'm just joking. I will if I have to, but holy smokes, it would have to be amazing. 170 minutes on Ska Sucks. It cracks me up. But it also has Who Will Help Me Bake This Bread, Homophobes Are Just Pissed Because They Can't Get Laid, and the song True are all on that Reclaim the Streets bootleg. And inside the booklet, it says, taken from the Birth Zine 7-inch, which is what I just told you about with Kung Fu Daniel. So this 7-inch is hard to track down information on. This Reclaim the Streets thing is not authorized. There's no record label. It's said to be unauthorized everywhere you see it online. Discogs doesn't list how many copies were made. There is a white center label with no words on the actual sticker that's on the vinyl. And the internet searches are not fruitful. I can't believe I actually have a copy of this. Interestingly, it sounds terrible. So unless you are super crazy obsessive about vinyl, I do not actually recommend spending your money on this thing. And if anybody knows the inside scoop on why this Reclaim the Streets thing exists, please let me know. But Headchester Foot is on it, and it's sitting here on my desk. But I don't know if this is also related, but there's also an organization called Reclaim the Streets, which is a collective with a shared ideal of community ownership of public spaces. Participants, characterize the collective as a resistance movement opposed to the dominance of corporate forces and globalization, and to the car as the dominant mode of transportation. So I'm wondering if this Reclaim the Streets bootleg 7-inch has anything to do with the Reclaim the Streets organization, but I haven't actually been able to prove that or confirm it in any way. So I'm just merely speculating with conjecture there. But I think I also sent you a link to the stream of the Martial Law with the cherry on top demo, right?
Yes.
Okay, so track 3 on that Martial Law demo is an obscure propaganda track called Support Gun Control, Kill a Hunter, which if you haven't heard, you should. But Discogs reports that demo as having come out in 1992. And hilariously, you can find the Martial Law demo on YouTube, and it has the scans of the liner notes, which are awesome. And you can see the nickname Jesus Chris, which appears clearly in the 1992 Martial Law with the cherry on top demo. So that's really cool because it's also on the Martial Law demo, Headchester Foot. So this thing is all over the place in the early propaganda recorded material. But interestingly, I can't find a video of propaganda actually playing this song.
Despite it being so old.
It's super old. It's on so many releases, and I couldn't find a video of them actually playing it. So that was just so weird to me. Did you have any luck finding videos of propaganda actually playing this?
I don't remember. Didn't see any this week, and I don't remember in the past ever coming across one.
I spent way too much time trying to find propaganda playing this song. Like, I watched so many 1990s sets where I was just clicking through 2 minutes at a time to go to the next song, just trying to find them playing this song. And I posted some of those links on YouTube today because they were amazing. There was one set I posted where they opened up in 1997 with Resisting Tyrannical Government and played like a super early version of Fuck the Border in 97 with Todd. And I was like, whoa, this must be one of the earliest versions of Fuck the Border because it's different. But no luck finding Headchester Foot. But on the inside of the How to Clean Everything reissue LP liner notes, I also found the nickname, the name of a man named Conrad Sickler, who says Conrad Sickler is not in the band. He is excess baggage and odd man out. So I did a little more digging, and it also says that Conrad Sickler had a role in recording the demo versions on the reissue, and that recording happened in 1992 at a place called Video Pool in Winnipeg on an 8-track. So I looked up Conrad Sickler, and I found out he is still a musician to this day and has a music project called Riot Nerd, and he lives across the border from me in Southern Ontario, and he can be found at conradsickler.com. So that's a random piece of propaganda history for you, that the guy who's listed as the 4th person in the roster of the band inside the reissue in 2013 lives like literally like 15 minutes away from me. Like, seriously, he's like right there, and is still playing music. But lastly, I went like so ridiculous on this, and I went through a list of compilations that propaganda has appeared on, and Headchester Foot appears on a 1997 Fight the Power Records compilation out of Germany that also featured 2 I Spy songs and another propaganda song. So I found this song in tons of different places, and I had a really interesting time doing some, back catalog discography research. You know what I mean?
This is what I was saying, Greg. I did not know that Headchester Foot was this old, and it's kind of made me think about it a little bit differently, hearing some of that backstory, knowing that it goes back before it would have been, written and recorded in 93 or 94.
So another thing I did today, which was a ton of fun, is I got a bunch of voicemails about How to Clean Everything and the role of that record in listeners' lives, right? So fans of the band, this record is undoubtedly a monumental piece of work in the history of this band. Regardless of your feelings about it, you cannot deny its influence in the history of punk music. Like, it's undeniable. It's one of like the 5 records, maybe one of the 3 records that people would associate if they know the legacy of Fat Records. I mean, this thing is so important. So today I put out a call on Instagram and Twitter with our Google Voice phone number, saying if you want to talk about what How to Clean Everything as a record means to you, to give us a call. So throughout this episode, there's going to be voicemails peppered throughout the episode. So thanks to everybody who sent us those fabulous messages. It's been a while since we did voicemails, probably 20 plus episodes since I put voicemails in the show. And I'm really glad that I took the time to gather these today. So here is a voicemail right now.
What's up, Unscripted Moments? This is Jeff Owens. How to Clean Everything, while not my favorite Propaganda album, is possibly the most important one to me because it is the one that got me into the band, as it was the only one that was out when I got into them. And over the years, the band would mold and shape my life, and I am still a huge fan, and they're one of the best bands I've ever heard in my life. So if it weren't for How to Clean Everything, I'm not sure that I would ever have gotten into them. So that album will always hold a special place in my heart.
All right, that was awesome. So we got tons of voicemails coming up, and I'm really excited. So we have a guest. Should we talk about the guest now?
Who is it, Greg?
So our guest this episode is Sue, the low frequency extraordinaire in Bridge 9 Records' powerhouse band, War on Women. Sue appears on War on Women's Capture the Flag and Wonderful Hell LPs. And in our chat, we talk about playing music, loving Propaganda, tour stories with Propaganda, because War on Women and Propaganda are buds, and Sue's love of How to Clean Everything and the tune Head, Chest, or Foot. So enjoy my fantastic conversation with Sue from War on Women.
They subsidize your nightclubs and they subsidize your malls. They hurt and brand the mass.
Hey, this is Chris from Miami, Florida, and I'm responding to the post that you put on Instagram about How to Clean Everything. It was one of the first punk rock records that introduced me to radical politics and got me thinking about why the world is the way it is, and I'm forever grateful for Propaganda. Not to mention their later shift towards metal. I mean, what's not to love? Thanks for the podcast.
Okay. We're rolling.
Sue, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about Propaganda.
Yo, what's up, Greg?
I'm so happy you're here.
I'm so stoked to do this podcast.
I'm so glad. That makes me really happy. It's just so joyful whenever people are as excited to be on the show as we are to make it, because it just makes it such a special experience. So thanks for your enthusiasm. It's just been wonderful planning this with you, and I'm really pumped that you're here. So,
yeah.
so Sue, can you maybe introduce yourself a little bit for the audience who may not know who you are?
Sure. My name is Sue. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, USA. And right now I play bass guitar in the band War on Women.
Woo!
And you know, I do some other stuff too. I'm a computer nerd and like a total dork, and that's about it.
Nice. Well, that new War on Women record, Wonderful Hell, is absolutely marvelous, by the way. And I look forward to all of you being able to get back on the road so you can bring those jams to some real audiences, you know?
Oh, God, you're not kidding. Like, we have never played most of those songs live.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it's gonna be so weird to like, it's so strange to have a new record out, but not have any experience to how the stuff works live at all. It's very, and I can't wait to play again though. It's really the only thing I like to do.
Nice.
So,
Well,
you know.
Sue, let's chat a little bit. Let's go back in time. What are some of your formative memories of like how you got into music, punk rock, hardcore, etc.?
Okay, well, I don't know. I've always been obsessed with music, whatever. When I was little, I had this one Beach Boys Greatest Hits record, and I would just play it over and over again on my little record player. And I was like, how does this even work? I thought that if you like broke the record in half, like little Beach Boys would fall out or something. That was my working theory at the time of how like recorded audio works. And I don't know, like like I guess like but I didn't really like find my musical home, I guess, until probably like 1991 when I accidentally happened to see this weird public access show called Alternative Music Express.
I had a similar
Late at night.
experience with public access in St. Louis. It was so important for me.
Right. I mean, like, I was like literally flipping channels, It was like the summer between like 8th and 9th grade.
Mhm.
And of course I was at home because where else was I going to be? I wasn't like cool, And this video came on, this VJ came on and said, all right, next up, we got the new song from Ned's Atomic Dustbin. And I'm like, what the fuck kind of band name is that? And I watched it and I was like, oh, this is my shit. This is my shit now. Oh, this is what I'm into now. Okay. Whatever. That's it. Like, and it wasn't just the song. It was like the whole aesthetic, of the
Yeah.
thing. Like if you watch that video, it's just like basically just like B-roll of like tour stuff,
Yes.
And it's like, but it's like, the kind of tour that like, like in a van and stuff, you know what I mean? Not like Aerosmith or something, it seemed like cool and like a, I don't know. It just seemed that it was like that I was like, that's where I want to be. That's where I want to be. So, I got really, really into, music from England, like shoegaze music.
Nice.
I guess you would call it like Britpop, but like really like pre Oasis and Blur. Like, I'm talking, I was really into like, I don't know, Teenage Fan Club, the Wonder Stuff, Pop Will Eat Itself, Mega City 4, My Bloody Valentine, Slow Dive, like,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, all the, but to be fair, I am a pop kid. Let me
Nice.
just put that out there. Like, a good pop song is what I've always reacted to. And, I love like complicated musical compositions, but really I need the hooks, dude. It took me a while to come to terms with that, because I thought like catchy stuff was not cool for a while, but you know what? It is. Catchy stuff is cool. I didn't actually get into punk for real, although I had one opportunity. I was like, this was like a formative moment in my life. I was at the record store and I had 2 7-inches, one in each hand. One was a Dinosaur Jr. 7-inch and one was a NoFX 7-inch.
Nice.
And I was like, which one should I get? NoFX. I don't know. I've heard of them, but I like effects. So I'm going to like put this one back and get the Dinosaur Jr. one instead. So, that I feel like my life would have been way different if I'd picked up that NoFX 7-inch.
Nice.
Anyway, but okay, so in 1994, we got America Online. Okay.
Yeah. Was it one of those
And,
like 20-hour disc things?
Mm-hmm. I had been really, I was always really into computers. I would like call up BBSs and stuff like that. But nobody that I talked to on a BBS like was into music. They were, they were all like total computer nerds. I don't know, and like getting to like talk to other people like that might be into the same stuff I was into was so awesome because nobody that I knew in real life was like into the same stuff that I was into unless I forced them to be,
Yes.
And I went into the punk chat room and
Nice.
and just I don't know, I started talking to this one dude from Long Island, and we got to chatting, and he was like, "Yo, I'll give you your address. I'll send you a mixtape." Okay, so he did, and now that was life changing. Holy crap! So there were 2 Propaganda songs on there.
Awesome.
Um,
1994, right? We're talking 94?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and one of them was Head, Chest, or Foot.
Awesome.
And God, and the other one was, I can't remember what the other one. It was like another like big like fast one. It wasn't like Ska Sucks or something.
It was probably
you know?
Anti-Manifesto. It had to have been the first 2 songs on the record.
Yeah, yeah, you know what? It probably was. It probably that tape is long gone, which makes me really sad.
Yeah.
You know, but he put like a veil on there,
Awesome.
and like I don't know, and I was like, oh my God, what the hell? This rules. I loved it, and that really was like kind of how like the first kind of like current punk band, like putting out records now.
Yeah.
Like Propaganda were probably one of the first bands like that I got into.
That is awesome. Okay, so that is the Propaganda origin story. Did you dive into their music from there? Like, did you go out and get the record after you got that mixtape?
Oh, I got the CD.
Okay.
I got the CD like immediately, and and then I like played it in my car constantly, and it was it was awesome. Like I really loved it. And then I remember when the second one came out. By that time, I was in college, and I had made real life punk friends, and I was actually like part of a scene, and it was like the best thing in the world. Like, check this out. This is so cool, right? like my first week of college, like I don't know, I had like I was like, I'm gonna meet some freaking punks, and I had like I put like an Avail sticker on my door, and like I came back from class a couple of days later, and somebody had written, "Hey, I like Avail too. I'm in room 514." So I went there and like made friends with this guy Fid, and we're friends to this day.
Oh my gosh, and I had these guys living across the hall from me who were super into, like hardcore, like a bunch of Christian stuff too, like Zayo and Norma Jean and everything like that, like bands like that. And they were across the hall from me, and I was like into like Strung Out and Bad Religion, and we sort of like kind of met in the middle, like meeting of the minds, like, hey, we're kind of all into sort of related music. We should be buds. And I just love that, like putting all young people with their own preferences for art and creativity all in one spot and letting them mingle and find each other. Like, you really come to find yourself and really grow as a person in those times.
Completely. And like, if you were like even into anything kind of punk adjacent, like you were cool.
Yeah.
Like as far as like me and like my friends went, and it was like, the hardcore kids and we were all straight edge, but we were like kind of like skirting the line between like hardcore and punk, I guess. There were like the like metal hardcore guys and like the toughy straight edge hardcore guys and the toughy not straight edge hardcore guys and the skinheads who were like not Nazis, by the way, at that time.
So, you're getting into music, you're finding these friends and these communities. When does performing come in onto the scene for you personally?
So I was in a couple bands in high school. And I was also like in like marching band and jazz band and like all that crap. But like I was in a couple bands in high school, but like not like really. Like we played like the Battle of the Bands and like maybe somebody's party in the basement. Nothing I would consider. And like also we were like terrible and didn't really know any songs, so whatever. But I started joining bands like basically the minute I got to college. So the first one was called Suburban Manifesto.
Ooh, okay.
And I still think it's pretty great. Anyway, and then I got asked to join this band. Like one of my favorite bands from New Brunswick was called this band called Stormshadow, and their guitarist moved away. So they asked me to play guitar. Holy shit. Like my favorite band is asking me to play guitar. What the hell,
Oh
so we were like a power trio, right?
Nice.
I played guitar and sang, then there was a bass player, singer, and then the drummer. And I don't know. I think we were pretty great. We were pretty influenced by Propaganda too, but we didn't
Nice.
sound anything like them. I would say politics wise.
Are there any recordings of that band
yeah.
with you performing in that band?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Nice.
they're on Spotify and stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, like the Don Giovanni Records actually put out like re-released our LP that never really came out. Because like the band was like on the verge of breaking up, and like we recorded this record, but like then the label that was supposed to put it out like went under or whatever, and like we just had a bunch of like CDRs that we just gave out at our last couple of shows, and Joe Steinhardt, who later went on to start John Giovanni Records, like was one of the kids who really liked our band. He was like 14 or something at the time, so he got one and he was like, this record rules. I'm gonna start a record label and put it out someday, and then he did for the 10th anniversary.
Okay, so say the name of that band and that record again.
Yeah, so the band is called Stormshadow, and the record is called Set on Destroy.
Awesome.
Meaning as if there was like a switch, like normal and destroy, like we would be set to destroy anyway.
Well, I know what I'm doing after this interview. I have something new to find and listen to, and it makes me extremely excited. Hooray.
Well, I hope you really like it. And Storm Shadow was the first band I like went on tour with.
Nice.
We like did an East Coast tour. Oh boy, man, it was tough. It was tough. Touring back in those days was just really different. You had your little notebook of everybody's phone numbers and like directions to all the shows and stuff, and then you would like have your payphone and your red box, and you would have to like if you like lost that notebook, like you were screwed. Tour over.
Oh my God, I love it.
It's so different now.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you're most well known now for being the bassist in War on Women on Bridge 9, like we said earlier.
Yeah.
And so how did that story of you coming into War on Women occur? Because as soon as you joined War on Women, your relationship as tour mates with Propaganda essentially jumps right from your joining. So tell me how you got into being in War on Women, which then leads to you being tour mates with Propaganda for a long time.
Well, I'll tell you. So I had been living in Baltimore for a couple of years, but I basically took kind of like almost a 10-year break from giving a shit about punk. Probably I would say from like 2002 to like 2012. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For reasons that like, I just was like burnt out, and my band had broken up in a kind of crappy weird way,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like bummed, and I was like, fuck this shit.
Yeah.
Plus I had moved to like a new city, and I was like, man, I can't weasel my way into yet another scene right now. But I don't know. So I tried doing a bunch of different crap, but none of it stuck. I like played roller derby and stuff. I don't recommend doing that if you don't know
Heart of the
what
body.
you're doing, because you're gonna break your leg like I did. It really sucked. And after I broke my leg, I was like, you know what? I'm not even like good enough at this to like make getting seriously injured worth it. So I'm gonna quit. There's got to be something else. So I don't know. I guess I just like, it's actually the Don Giovanni to the rescue yet again, because they asked Stormshadow to play their 10th anniversary showcase at like Williamsburg Hall of Music. Okay, so we had to like practice again, and I had to like drive to New Jersey every weekend for a couple of months and like relearn all the songs, which was really hard.
Yeah,
because I didn't. If you like listen to Stormshadow, this may become clear. I did not know what I was doing, like as far as like songwriting and guitar playing, and I don't think I could ever write shit like that again.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Time and place.
Yeah. No, it's just like now, like now I kind of know how to play, not how to play better, but how to like, what chord should go next.
Sure.
But I didn't really know that stuff quite so much back then. So I think my stuff was like a little more wacky and maybe a little bit more creative, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know, but like it was really hard to like kind of recreate my thought process. Anyway, so it turns out, I liked playing.
Yeah.
We played that show, and it was like the best night that I'd had in like 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, wait, this is what I like. Wait, why did I stop doing this? I gotta fucking join a band immediately when I get back to Baltimore. So I did. I joined this like kind of like Ramones style like punk and roll type band where I played bass. I knew how to play bass. I had never like played bass in a band before though, but whatever. I can fucking play eighth notes. So so like we played a show at the Auto Bar one time, and Brooks happened to be doing sound.
Nice.
Okay. And I knew Brooks and Shauna because I would like take them my guitars and amps to get fixed.
Yeah.
I didn't really know War on Women that much. I had seen them one time at like a show outside called Hamden Fest, and I was like, whoa, these guys shred.
Yeah.
And like, but I don't know. I didn't really like follow up for whatever reason. I don't know. And then like I don't know, like I get like a text from Shauna, which was weird because like I didn't have any like stuff in the shop, and she's like, you know what, hey Sue, would you mind coming down to the shop? Brooks wants to talk to you. And I was like, huh, okay, that's weird. Am I in trouble? Like I barely know these guys. Look at this fucking me about. So I go down there, and they asked Sue, would you be interested in playing bass for War on Women? And because they had a different bass player named Rusty, but he had to leave the band for whatever reason, and they asked me if I wanted to do it, and I was like, okay, maybe, I guess. And they're like, well, you can totally think about it, but we have a tour coming up in February with Propaganda, like a West Coast tour with Propaganda. And I was like, oh, yes. Write my name in pen. Yes, I'm doing it. Yeah, okay. And Brooks was like, okay, cool. I'll send you the songs. We play in drop C sharp. And I was like, shit, what's that?
Oh my God. That is so cool. Okay. So I know that, War on Women and Propaganda have toured together. There was a 14-show European tour in 2013 with Shai Hulud just before you were in the band, and then 2 tours in 2014. So there was 8 shows that started in Toronto at Lee's Palace, which I've been to several times. Cool little venue with a very high stage. And ended in Chicago at the Concord in the summer. And then there were 7 more shows in Texas and Florida in December through January of 2015 and 16. So, and a lot of those
I'm glad you remember this stuff.
Well, I had to look it all up. I was looking at all this yesterday, finding the tour posters and everything for the Failed States era. And a lot of the shows were also with Reviver.
Right.
And I'm curious if you can tell me, like, so this was like a tour package that went on for a couple of different tours with this same tour package, essentially. And I'm curious if any stories stand out to you from these runs with Propaganda and Reviver, especially since you had been a fan of Propaganda for so long, coming in and maybe becoming social with them as like friends and people for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was a very strange experience for me, I have to say, because this was like a band I was into when I was in high school,
right?
And like I don't usually get to like meet bands like that, or at least at that time I didn't, for damn sure,
Yeah.
And also like Reviver were one of my favorite current bands playing. I remember when
they're amazing.
When we got like the email that we were asked to do this tour, and hey, are you available for these dates, Sue? I was like, not exactly, but yes, I am now. I was like, I'll sort something out with my job. Like it was like just such a. I was like, I can't believe that I'm going to get to go on tour with like these 2 bands. Holy crap, There is one. Okay, if you have like our tours, the list of our tours or something, is there a tour with Reviver that ended in Chicago when it was hot out? like in the summer?
I mean, it looks like there was some shows that were in the summer that started at Lee's in Toronto and ended in Chicago at the Concord, and I believe that was with Reviver.
Okay, then because like I know it was with Reviver, and I know it was the summer, and
And I
here's
think it
the
was
deal.
2014 as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Maybe it was Florida. Anyway, I don't know. Whatever. I'm in my mind it's Chicago, but it could be wrong. Okay. So it was really hot. Okay. And the way this tour worked, like Propaganda usually tours like the dudes like go in a van or whatever, and the gear goes like in a box truck that
Mhm.
Barney, their front of house guy, drives. And like, and it's also called Barney, but like call it his beer cave because they had to handle like lots of beers in there and stuff. Um,
Shout out to Barney.
and there's always like one or two nights on tour where like we don't have to like leave super early the next day or something, so we hang out and drink after the show. It's definitely not every night, but maybe like once or twice per tour. Like we'll like have a fucking party in the parking lot, and this was one of these nights, and somebody like Brooks had to pee, right? So he like kind of goes into like the alley to pee, and like Jord, I want to say, like runs up to him and says, "Brooks, no, what are you doing? You're wasting valuable piss." That's not a good Jord impression, but anyway, so he hands Brooks like a bottle and is like, "Pee in this." Okay, like sure, but why? Well, apparently Barney had been. Well, I don't know if it was like Barney's idea. They wouldn't tell us what it was for, but there was like a the kind of water bottle that goes like on a water cooler.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
maybe
it's like
about
those big tall
five
ones.
gallons
Yeah.
or something. So there was one of those in the back of Barney's truck full of piss. Okay.
Okay.
Like it had a cap on it and stuff, but it had just like been sitting in the fucking back of the van, like baking, steaming.
This is an amazing story.
No, I know it is. And we were like, what is this? What? And they're like, oh, you'll see. Okay, fine. The last night of the tour, and again, I remember it being in Chicago, but I could be wrong about that.
I think you're right. I think it is Chicago at the Concord.
They were like, okay, you guys want to see some Canadian fireworks? Canadian fireworks, eh? Okay. What are Canadian fireworks, you may ask? Well, I didn't know either. And it's when you have a fucking big bottle of piss and then back the truck over it so it explodes and gets everywhere.
Okay.
So, yep. So that's like what happened that night. And but they were all so stoked about it. They were so stoked about it.
Oh my god, I love it. So it was like just
I mean,
like
they're
just
like,
the gear
I was like,
truck.
what the hell is this? Like what people in Canada do? And they're like, yeah, we're from Winnipeg.
I mean, it's very cold, so you find things to entertain oneself,
I've been watching Letterkenny,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
kind of feel like it makes me understand those guys a little bit more.
Nice. I love it. Well, and you also like probably got to. I'd imagine that you got to see so many propaganda shows.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm assuming that you watched all these gigs, right, and just kind of like
course,
soaked
of
it all
course.
in.
Of course. And like I would usually, not every night, but usually I would just like, finish loading out or doing what I had to do. And then I'd just like be like, time to get into the crowd and like just like run up front. If I wasn't in the crowd, I was watching from the side of the stage, but I like watching from the house because it sounds better, And
Absolutely.
like it's cooler. It's, I don't know, whatever. And plus like it's fun. It's like so fun to like watch a band that you really like.
Yeah.
At a big show, it's like, is there anything cooler than that? Like I have like the coolest job in the world, like
Mhm.
seriously, it's great. And also Reviver, I love Reviver,
Yeah.
and I got to fill in on bass for them a
Oh,
couple times.
sweet.
Yeah, like there was like one show where their bass player had to like the last show of the tour, their bass player had to like go to a wedding or something, so he had to like leave one day early. So they asked me if I could like learn the songs and do it, and I was like, hell yeah. So I did, and it was awesome. And then I got to go on tour with them to Brazil in like 2015
As the bass player.
Uh-huh.
Awesome.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it like I can't sometimes believe some of the shit I've gotten to do in the last couple of years. It's
So
like
amazing.
I don't know what I like did to deserve this, but whatever it is, it wasn't enough.
Amazing.
know?
Well, were you also in, because I know that on those tours, like you all filmed a music video for a Reviver song as well. Were you in that
Oh, yeah.
video?
No, I'm not in that video, even though that's my favorite Reviver song.
That is
Do you
such
know
a bummer.
why I'm not in the video?
Why?
Because I was in the hotel room learning Reviver songs.
Oh my God! Because
'Cause
I
I
was
had to-
watching the video looking for you, and I saw Todd and Jord, and I couldn't pick you out in the crowd, and I was like, I think that Sue might be in there.
No, yeah, I'm not. I didn't know. I didn't know they were going to film a video. They were just going to this like wildlife reserve like near Gainesville.
Nice.
Because there were like alligators there or something.
I did see the alligators. The alligators make an appearance in the video.
You know, I really did need to like take some time to like sit and practice those songs though. So it's
Yeah.
probably good that I didn't go. So, you know, because I don't want to like embarrass myself and not know the songs and stuff. That would suck.
Well, and you know, something else that jumps out to me about propaganda history is that you and I got in touch after we aired our episode for I Am a Rifle because you sing on that song. And I'm
Yeah.
curious if you can tell me how that came about. Where did you record the vocals? And maybe a little bit of thoughts about I Am a Rifle.
Yeah. So I wasn't familiar with the band,
The
or,
Rebel
like,
Spell.
Yeah, with the Rebel Spell at all. Until we got asked to do this like benefit thing, and you know, how did this come about? I actually have no idea. I'm assuming like propagandy. Also, I know I pronounced that wrong. I know I always say propagandy, and everybody else
It doesn't really
says
matter.
it correctly, propagandy. But you know,
No.
anyway.
I think
Sorry.
I think that everybody's cool with it. If you're, I think it's kind of cool both ways. But Chris says a propagandy, and George says. So I say I've just sort of taken that on in my
Right.
approach to doing the show. So it's fine either way. Say it however it comes out of your mouth naturally.
Okay, good, because I feel like I've been switching it up, and it's probably confusing.
No, it's fine. Totally fine.
Anyway, so I have no idea how it came about. Like initially, I just think that it's really cool that they asked us to sing backups on it. Like, and we recorded it at Magpie Cage Studios, which is where we have recorded all of our stuff. It's Jay Robbins's studio
Nice, yeah.
here in Baltimore. And Brooks actually works there too. I mean, well, the Brooks and Shauna's like guitar and amp store or shop is like in the same building.
Nice.
So, you know, it's like you kind of have to be friends. And you know, Brooks is actually like very skilled like sound person, so he can like engineer us himself if need be. I'm not sure if Jay was like even a part of this, you know, but it was definitely at his studio, and you know, we got to. I remember like we like me and Shauna and Nancy just like standing around the microphone, going like, "Whoa!" Yeah, that was really fun, and it was just like so unbelievably cool to be on a propaganda song. Come on, man.
It's incredible.
It is. Like, I still don't like. I feel like I don't even like. I feel like I should probably like take a couple minutes every day to like appreciate this stuff more.
Well, that's why you're here. You know, we're appreciating it in
good.
real time together, which is what makes me so happy.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so you know, when we were talking about you being on an episode for this show, I make all guests pick a song for the episode that they want to appear on, and I sort of steered you on purpose towards how to clean everything because we've been neglecting that LP for episodes. So, why did you wind up landing on Head, Chest, Foot for your song of choice?
Well, first of all, it's because it was one of those two songs on the original mixtape, which was called Fat Tape from Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, he was from Long Island, you know. Anyway, so I like, I feel like this song is just so such a perfect encapsulation of like the early propaganda music stuff, you know. Like it's such like a tight little like pop tune, you know.
Yeah.
Like and like it's it's got like a lot going on, like guitar wise, and like I remember like trying to learn how to play it, and I'm like, fuck, these guys like probably listen to a lot of Metallica or something.
And they do.
And I like didn't listen to a lot of Metallica at that time. That came a little bit later for me. I kind of like was afraid of metal for a while. but like like the like super fast like palm muting stuff like that, and like but that fuck that and but that like huge undeniable riff, it's like it's just such a cool riff. And I don't know, the lyrics are kind of like wake up sheeple sort of, but said in like in a this is what like I felt like made this band stand out for me initially, was like, first of all, their lyrics were really like angry, but they were also like really good, like really like well written and like clever and funny.
It raises the
know?
bar for that era. I've heard a lot of
For
people say.
for sure. And I was like, oh, there's bands like this is awesome. Because like I was also like kind of getting into like more activist politics around that time in my life too. And like but like this song I don't feel like is like the most like sophisticated like of ideas. I kind of feel like every punk band has written a song with this kind of wake up message, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple lines in it that like kind of make me okay. They like they subsidize their nightclubs and they subsidize your malls. Like, you know what? I know, like here, that I always like was like wondered about that line, because I know people that like run the auto bar and stuff like that. Man, they don't get subsidized. What are they talking about? I'm sure it's just like an idea, but I don't know. It's just like interesting, because I feel like like everybody, your politics mature a little bit as you get older, right?
Mhm.
Like nobody has it figured out like at the very beginning, and like I feel like this is like this song like really kind of spoke to me as somebody who was just like super angry at everything at the time, which like you're in high school and like you have all this anger and you're not exactly sure where to point it. Well, this song kind of gave me like a very like broad target, to like point my vitriol at,
Mhm.
which like and like two choices, like one future, two choices: oppose them or let them destroy us. That's like really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And like with kind of everything, right? Like if you want to like be like a radical person or anti-capitalist person, that's really your choice, and it's like it's but like I said, I feel like it's kind of like this record spoke to me when I was a teenager in a way that I feel like maybe their later stuff wouldn't have, like because it was the ideas are just kind of more like, I don't think I was like totally ready like to start with, like, for example, failed states,
Mm.
because I didn't like understand that like enough. You know what I'm saying?
Were you really latching into these ideas at such a young age, or because like for me, I was totally oblivious to many of the messages that I was hearing on
Mhm.
propaganda records when I first heard them in like 97, 98. And How to Clean Everything was my favorite first record that I heard by them as well. But it was over my head. Like, when did you find yourself latching into the fact that they were actually saying something about society around us?
Well, I kind of like, everyone has like a vague idea that something's fucked up.
Yeah.
But you're not sure what it is because you don't really like learn it in school, and back, during, back when I was in school, like there wasn't really an internet, like um there really just like wasn't a way to like find this stuff out on your own until, but I took this one class in school, AP American History, okay?
Hmm.
And here's the thing about that class. It was like, the history textbook we read was fine. It was like, a kind of boring old school, like it was like like the author was Morrison. I don't remember what the book was called, but the thing that really made me fall in love with, I guess, history was also had like a historiography kind of portion of the class, which is like basically the study of how different historians from different times write about events. You know,
Yeah.
like for example, somebody like that was like writing about the French Revolution like 5 years later would probably say different shit than somebody that was writing about it 20 years later, right?
Right,
And this
exactly.
idea had never occurred to me. Okay, that like you actually can't really believe what you read in history books a lot of the time, because you have to know like the motivations behind the person that was writing it, right? And this was like a very revolutionary idea to me, but it immediately made history so interesting. You know?
Yeah. Well, and
And
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and like so I kind of just got really into like kind of I guess like looking deeper and question that, like looking at the footnotes, like
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And it kind of just like really everything that I was reading like was just like really pointing me down this path of this is fucking bullshit. This America stuff is fucking bullshit. Wait a minute. Am I the only one that realizes this? Like, you know?
Yeah. Well, and like what's so awesome about these lyrics in this song is like they herd and brand the masses within painted prison walls. So
Mhm.
it's like that we're living almost in like a self-created minimum security prison
Mhm.
where we are pacified to almost the point of like not even being able to function. It's almost like a Wall-E simulation where
Mhm.
we're all totally oblivious to everything around us. Like we're consuming our Netflix and we're consuming our outlet malls and we're consuming our gas guzzling giant vehicles. And as long as our creature comforts are provided to us in such a manner, we just go on living within this delusion, realizing that we've set ourselves up for, just like this totally unsatisfying existence.
Right, yeah. And it it really did make me kind of, learning how to read history,
Yeah.
okay, I would say, and also kind of getting into like bands like Propaganda around this time, like really did change my worldview a lot, and like if I remember correctly, I don't have the CD anymore, okay, but like
Mhm.
but the CD, I remember the booklet. Didn't it have like like kind of notes about each song?
I'd have to go back and look as well. I have the LP in the other room, but I don't have it in front of me. But
Mhm.
it's all handwritten and everything, and
Right.
like all the handwriting is just so fantastic and like comedic, and I love it because it really draws in the attention.
Yeah, and I thought that it was like so cool that I don't know if I'd ever really seen that before. Like,
Yeah.
basically like a little mini essay about what the song's about.
Well, and there's tons of essays on the inside of Less Talk More Rock as well. So,
Hmm.
there's so much reading to be done within Propaganda. And that's like kind of what the amazing thing about doing this show is that every song has just these rabbit holes to go down.
Totally.
And if you find it at the right time and place in your life, it peels back the illusion and the lies that we've been told growing up that, you live in like this wonderfully, fantastic, perfect union, manifest destiny, blah, 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 all of our God ordained everything.
Hmm.
And it just gives you a new way of looking at things to where you almost can't unsee it once you see it.
You know what? I know that we wanted to focus on this one song, but can I just bring up one other lyric
Of
that
course.
that has just stuck with me like my whole life?
This is the
okay?
Propaganda podcast. Go for it.
It's from Less Talk More Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I just want to pull up the lyrics real quick because I have the website. Hold on a second. By the way, like when that record Let's Talk More Rock came out, it was like, man, everybody was like, "Oh my god, is this the fucking best record or fucking what?"
I feel like you would either be totally loved or completely hated because, like, the second track's like "Stop Consuming Animals," and like, so anybody who would feel like a personal reaction to that might be like, "I don't want to listen to this. This is terrible." So I feel like it would
Dude.
either be totally loved or totally panned.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like my the crew that I hung out with around this time of my life, not everybody was like vegan or vegetarian, but like everybody knew it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
and like it's not like it's not like it was like the vegans didn't yell at the non-vegans, but like like that, like consider someone else, stop consuming edibles, like sorry, that like became like a catchphrase, like that we would consider someone else, get your shit off of my desk.
Nice. Oh my God! Is that the lyric? Is that
actually has a lyric? Consider someone else. Go Stormshadow or go fuck yourself.
awesome? Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I love it when I see like little nuggets within other bands where they pay homage to like bands that they look up to. Like that's so cool. Was that the lyric that you were going to mention?
No, it isn't. Hold on a second.
Okay,
Sorry.
totally fine.
It's the preteen McCarthyist song.
Oh yeah.
And it's the very end of the song. Okay, it's like oh, it makes me like cry just thinking about it. Like I remember, like maybe you're a lot like me. Identified 14 years without a choice. Terrified the morning you woke up and realized that if when you jump ship, you either swim for shore or drown. Don't let the fucker drag you down, right?
Yeah.
And like, psh, like it gives me chills. Sorry.
I'm like emotional just
No, I mean,
having you read those to me.
like, and let me just tell you, like, I kind of feel like a lot of people, like older people or people that like weren't maybe familiar with, I don't know, or the idea that everything is fucking bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a hard thing to come to terms with, I think, and like a lot of people don't want to. It's because it's scary and it's alienating, right?
Yeah.
And like like I feel like a lot of people are probably having feelings like that now just because of what's going on in American politics, like what like has been going on for the
Right.
past, especially 4 years, and like especially the past like month, right? Like it like I feel like you can't fucking ignore it. Like if you are ignoring this now, like you're stupid, or no, not stupid, sorry, you're just watching the wrong news channels, or it's like, it
or
sucks.
you know who butters your bread. You know what I mean?
No, that's true.
And for listeners' reference out there who might be listening to this many years in the future, we're recording this in late
Probably they
January 2021 after the failed coup insurrection, and just after the inauguration of Joe Biden as president of the United States, just to give some context for what we mean when we say the last month in our society.
It has been like the most, the most stressful couple. Like I can't even imagine. Like what the fuck are we even going through right now? Like
Yeah, we have national PTSD for sure. Like I've been walking around in a state of total distraction and inability to be productive on many days, and I just keep thinking about like, why can't I function right now? What has happened to me? And then I just think about the fact of all the things that we've been going through together as a country for the last year, and it has really gotten to me to the point to where I essentially walk around in a zombified state a lot of the time.
Same. And like I don't know, it's really kind of had like, not to like complain, but I kind of didn't, I think, realize how much of my social life was like dependent on shows and like random running into people.
Yep.
Like because like I don't, I have a Facebook account, but I don't really like, I haven't like logged into it in months. Like I could just delete it, but I don't know, whatever. Anyway, like maybe I should just delete it, whatever. Anyway, like and like is like however, and that but the thing is, like a lot of, before I quit Facebook, a lot of like the relationships, like my real life relationships had kind of like all moved there, like
yeah.
Like unless I'm like running into people at shows or out, which would happen a lot, because like if I'm like it's Tuesday night and I'm bored, I just go to the auto bar, somebody will be there, and like not having that has been really, really, really isolating.
Yeah,
because
and I hear you.
I kind of like this sucks, but I think I like don't remember how to like be a good friend in real life, like without seeing people anymore.
Yeah.
Like because I'm just the worst. Like I can't like I never like think to like just text people out of nowhere usually because I don't know. Like I'll be like, "Oh, well, I got nothing to do. Let's like play a video game." You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And like a few of my friends and I, some of my oldest friends, we've been making a point of like scheduling a Zoom call together where we can just like sit together and like have a beer and just like talk about our weeks and be like, "Hey, I've known you, you've been my friend since I was 13 and I can't see
Mhm.
you right now, and I'm realizing how much this injures me
Yeah.
that we can't physically be together right now because we all have families and there's just so much risk involved,
Right.
and we don't want and most of my friends live far away. Like I live in Buffalo, New York, and I'm not from here, so my friends sometimes live thousands and thousands of miles away, and I miss them
Yeah,
tremendously.
same.
So
Same.
like, and it doesn't bother me as much whenever, like, say last February, whenever like before the pandemic really hit the United States, and I could get on a a plane, like be like, "Hey, I can go
Mhm.
there." Like I'm not going there, but I could go there if I wanted.
Mhm.
So it's even worse now when it's like I can't.
Yeah, for real. God, like the couple of like months, well, weeks, I guess, leading up to the tour that we were supposed to do
Hmm.
with Bad
And
Religion
Alkaline Trio, the 40th
and
anniversary.
Alkaline
I was
Trio.
going to see you at Riverworks in Buffalo.
Man, that that
That was
tour,
hard.
yeah. Um, but you know what? Like not knowing whether the tour was still happening was like very anxiety producing because it didn't actually get canceled until I don't know. Like I mean, there was like I think I want to say like everything shut down like for COVID. I'd say March 18th. I want to
Yeah,
say that
something
was the
like
day
that.
that the shit hit the fan, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think we found out until like maybe the first week of April that we weren't actually doing it. So
Yeah.
those couple of weeks were like weird limbo. I'd already like signed up to take off from work,
Right.
and like I had my plane ticket and and like and then it got canceled and it was like because the thing is, like, it's not like we could just like not go on the tour. If the tour's happening, like we have to go. But like, we're like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Like, best case scenario, we play to like half empty places and half the shows get canceled. Worst case scenario, we all die in our van.
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
and then you would hear the constant support reports of 75 people that were at this show in this city are now
Right.
dead. And it's like then
Ugh.
you're actively losing fan base who are dying from
Yeah.
going to shows. I mean,
Oh my
it's
god.
so wild. So,
Yeah.
and I had a ticket for that show at Riverworks here in Buffalo, and I was so excited for it, but it's just the way it is now,
I
you know?
really hope that it gets rescheduled someday. I don't know. I just like hope that we get our vaccines and we can be normal again and go to shows. Like I'm gonna go to so many goddamn shows. Like
I will
I'm not gonna be lazy on a Tuesday night and not feel like going out. I'm gonna make sure I go out.
I tell you what, it's so funny. Like I've never stopped going to shows my whole life. Like I've been going to shows since February of 1998, and I never have taken a gap from going to shows until now. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad that I never said I'm not going to go to the show because I'm too tired. That's not been a part of my life. Like I have been committed to seeing music like ever since I was a teenager, and I'm this year I've been sustaining myself knowing how many shows I didn't skip that I
Yeah.
considered skipping, but I didn't. And it just makes me so happy how much I've seen and how much I've been a part of it all. So, I'm going to get through it the other side, and I'll be going to shows again.
Yeah, man. Hey, Buffalo. I don't know if we've ever played a big show there, but we played a little show there one time at like a some sort of collective type of
Sugar
deal.
City.
Yeah.
Sugar City, definitely Sugar City.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. I remember that show. And I remember we went and saw we went on a hike and we saw like a waterfall with a flame behind it.
Yeah, the Eternal Flame. It's in Orchard Park, or East Aurora, New York. It's just south of Buffalo, and it's a super famous park. So you walk down that big steep hill, and then you walk up the creek bed, and there's a flame that is like burning by natural gas on the inside of a waterfall. It's absolutely amazing.
It was like so cool. Walking back up that hill kind of sucked.
Hard work. Well, so anyway, Sue, it's so awesome to, have you on the show to talk about tour stories of Propaganda with the giant pee bottle. That was especially memorable for me. But
you know what? I actually texted George to make sure that it was okay to tell that story.
Oh my gosh. Well, maybe Jord will hear this. We haven't had Jord on the show yet, and I would love it if Jord would come on the podcast sometime. I've had Chris, Todd, Sue Lynn, and Beeve. So Jord's hopefully I can snag him for a chat sometime soon.
George is my number one. Sorry.
I love it.
Not that I like, have like a favorite band members of a band, but George's my number one. I've actually never seen a show with Sue Lynn though. I've never.
Interesting.
It's just not happened. It's just we were.
It will
supposed
happen.
to, but yeah,
it will happen.
It will happen.
Well, so Sue, you've been a fan of this band for a long time, 25 plus years at this point.
Yeah.
At this point in your life, after being a fan of music in a well-known touring band, War on Women, who has collaborated with Propaganda, and a person who cares about issues similarly to Propaganda, how would you describe the role this band has played in your life over up until this point?
I mean, I would say it's pretty important. Really, like from the first time that I listened to them on that fat tape from Joe, back in 1994, I was hooked, right? And like they have been an influence on me musically, like very, very much so. Like I especially their later stuff, like the songwriting is just like unbelievable. Like I don't know, like sometimes I listen to like some of their songs and I'm like, how did they write this part? Like how did this part come after this other part? Like I would never think to do that. Like I remember I actually asked Chris one night on tour. I was like, Chris, is it like, are you one of those people that like can write songs like really easy? Like, do you guys like write songs really easy, or is it hard? He's like, no, it's really hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
We slave over every single song, and I'm like, okay, good, thank God.
Yeah.
Because I'm like that too. Like I am so jealous of people that can just like, oh yeah, the song just came to me in a dream and it was like fully written, and like there are people that I know that are like that, and I believe them, and I'm super jealous of them. I am not like that. For me, like everything is like pulling teeth, and like I'm not good at doing stuff on my own, I'm really into like collaboration, and doing stuff together, like also because like I find it like really hard to get motivated all by myself, so like it was like just really cool to hear that like it's hard for like them too, like I don't know, because it always just like looks easy, you never see the hard part. Like nobody, like I don't know, people that don't play in bands don't realize how like boring not boring, but like it's just like so much, it's like a lot of work, and it's so much repetition. It's so much repetition, you know. You have to like, just okay, fine, I'm just not getting this part, can we just loop it until I get it? Okay, we'll play it 60 fucking times. All right, okay, I got it now. Right, like it's, I don't know, it's like they've like kind of expanded my view of like what it can, like, what I guess like how hardcore songs like can sound, I don't know, and like they're just like, and like they've literally changed my life by like if Propaganda hadn't been part of I probably would have joined War on Women anyway, but the fact that Propaganda was like part of the deal, like going on tour with them, was like that sealed it completely. You know what I mean? I didn't even have to think about it. Like
amazing.
I don't know what like would have happened. Like where would I be now if I hadn't done that? Probably in the same house that I'm in now. But I would have like less cool shit on my walls. I don't know.
You have a lifetime full of amazing memories that you will carry with you forever. Like you said earlier, like you're thinking about like the amazing things you've been able to do in the world. It's truly incredible when I think back on some of the incredible things I've been able to do too. And it just makes me really happy. And I'm glad that we were able to hang out, chat, touring, head, chest, foot, how to clean everything, fun stories. I'm also going to check out your other band, which I'm really stoked about as well. And, it just, it's just nice to hang out and to
Oh,
kill
totally.
a little bit of time during these hopefully waning days of this pandemic as we try to get vaccines out into the world. But Sue, War on Women, awesome new record, great conversation. I am super grateful to you for your time on a Saturday evening.
Hey, you guys should check me out on Twitter where I like post like fucking the worst crap. I'm at Captain Sue, CAPNSUE, like Captain Crunch, but Captain Sue. All
And
right.
my favorite thing about your Twitter account too is that you're actually engaging. Like if I comment, we've had a lot of back and forths on there. So sometimes like, commenting on folks' Twitters is like, commenting into the void. But
No, exactly.
I've loved our interactions on Twitter too. So that really makes me happy. It kind of helps kill some time.
Yeah, and that's all we can do, right?
We got to be there for each other. Thanks for being here, Sue. I'm super pumped.
Thank you so much, Greg. This was a blast.
But I'm not the same. I'm not part of your fucking machine. I'll jeopardize your dream. I'd rather be in prison in a George Orwellian world than a pacified society of happy boys and girls. I'd rather know my enemies.
Hey, this is Pat from The Decline, and I just wanted to ring up and say what I love about How to Clean Everything. Obviously, I love that it's fast and melodic, and the guitar work is sick, but the coolest thing is it came out in 1993. It came out like before Dookie and before Smash and before Punk in Drublic. It was like so ahead of its time. It's one of obviously the best skate punk records, and how did some teenagers from Canada just manage to do that when they were children and just blow everyone else away? I reckon it's probably my favorite propaganda record. Anyway, thanks for making the sick podcast. See you later.
How to Clean Everything is my favorite album. It is the first album I ever heard from Prop when I was like 12 years old. I absolutely love it. The first three tracks, Anti-Manifesto, Head, Chester, Foot, and Hate, Myth, Muscle, and Etiquette are just the most incredible first three songs of any album. And I spent, I think, 2 days when I was 13 years old trying to find track 11, Who Will Help Me Bake the Spread, on LimeWire, because I didn't have any money to buy the album. So yeah, it is the greatest album of all time, and this phone call is costing me probably like $30 from Canada. Rock on. Bye.
How to Clean Everything is timeless and perfect, and there are three moments that I think stand out to me. First, the track opener, Anti-Manifesto, is absolutely still words to live by. Second, Showdown is one of the most rockin' tunes ever recorded on a punk rock album, and it combines the angry progressive thrash that we know and love from Propaganda. And most importantly, in these weird times, I play the end of Ska Sucks every time I think about Rudolph Giuliani. Thanks for the great podcast, guys.
Hey, what's up, Keith? It's Nick Jackson from Melbourne, Australia, calling. I just wanted to tell you the reason that I love How to Clean Everything is because it was fast, it was political, it was the first propaganda record that I ever heard, and Anti-Manifesto taught me that I can fit a swear word in the middle of another word. Keep up the great work, guys. Love the pod. Bye.
Whose windows will smash and whose tires will slash. And when I point the fucking blame.
All right, so that was my awesome chat with Sue from War on Women, who I got to hang with last Saturday evening. And, these chats are really helping me get through this Buffalo winter. And I just want to tell Sue, you rock. Loved hanging out, and it was so crazy and awesome to get to meet you and to talk about your love of this band, Propaganda, and rock him with War on Women on tour. So that was so cool. But Keith, when we were chatting off air earlier, you were like, isn't there something else inside that Reclaim the Streets 7-inch? And I totally forgot to tell you about this, but on the inside of the 7-inch, it says this record is a benefit release. All the money will be donated to an anarchist collective in order to organize a Reclaim the Streets demonstration. So that is what it says on the inside. I wasn't really able to find much beyond that, but I just wanted to throw that back in there before we moved on, and people would be thinking that I purposefully skipped that. So anyway, what should we talk about first tonight?
I want to start with the music, Greg. And again, I think with your experience as a drummer, I think the drums really stand out here. And I think that would be a good place to intro into our music chat.
I completely agree. I actually really like the drums on this song. I've really come around on Jord's strength on the mid-tempo tunes across the entire Propaganda discography. Like, I know that every time we talk about a mid-tempo tune like Cut Into the Earth, Bringer of Greater Things, Negredo, When All Your Fears Collide, I start just really honing in on the care that is put into the drums. And I was thinking about, I saw a playthrough video on Instagram the other day of a guy who plays in the band Clipwing in Winnipeg. And he did a playthrough video of the drums for Cut Into the Earth. And I was just mesmerized watching this mid-tempo performance of Jord, knowing that Jord is responsible for this part that this guy was playing in this playthrough video. And I was just like, oh my gosh, Jord is just so awesome. You know, maybe Jord's listening to this. Jord, come on the podcast. Anyway, so the drums on Head, Chest, or Foot are so solid. I mean, if you just listen to the first 20 seconds of this song, the snare fill choices that he's making as a percussionist are so interesting. The fills are not predictable. The little choices that he makes in the first 20 seconds are so precisely chosen and interesting. And I just love what he does specifically on his snare rolls throughout this record. And I wonder if these fills Jord does on this song were accidentally stumbled upon through lots and lots of trial and error, or, you know, how he went about creating it, because they speak so well to that that lick on the guitar. So it's like that the snare rolls are just so perfect speaking to Chris's guitar. And I love that whenever I notice bands doing that. Like, I think that Nick Angelini and the Wilhelm Scream speaks so well to the bass in that band. And, you know, so I start to pick up on things whenever I notice, as a drummer, I pick up on when drummers, their instruments are speaking to another instrument in the band, as opposed to just bashing it out. You know what I mean? And then all the instruments are just playing on top of it. So, like, are the drums speaking to something else within the music, or are they just going at it and then all the music is just layered on top? And the more I listen to this band for this podcast, I keep feeling like Jord is just like, his drums are speaking to the other instruments, as opposed to just laying in some beat and then Chris and John are piling on top of him. You know what I mean?
That's a great observation. And I think because I'm not a guitarist, I play a little guitar for fun, but I think because of my own connection with guitar, that's always just what has stood out the most. And I've never really thought much about the drummings on songs like Head, Chest, or Foot. So listening today, it was almost like I was hearing some of the drums for the first time. And that snare is definitely the first thing that stood out to me. And Greg, I hear just an incredible gap in the drumming between some of the early demos or independent releases that Propaganda put out, and then clearly on this song. And it kind of makes me think of metal bands that maybe start in their teens. Maybe they have like developing technique and speed and style. Those things evolve over 2 decades or longer. And it can often make the early recordings and the drumming, I don't know, maybe stand out or make it a little bit of a hard listen, because at least for me, I've always noticed that like early on for a younger, say, metal band, that the drumming was always the most lacking, or at least that's also what's changed the most. For example, in metal, it's just gotten so over the top. But hearing this, like, while it is drastically different in terms of what Jord is doing later on, it's still incredibly good. And I think I saw his drumming early, kind of like that, because it was different and the band was younger. I saw it as being less and therefore wasn't really interested. And I'm wrong for sure there. The snares you mentioned, I think at the end of each line, they're really sharp, they're complex, and they're unique. And even the rhythm that he establishes after that with the snare is complex. And I think otherwise it could be written off as just a melodic skate punk song. He could have done something a lot simpler, but the tempo picks up before reverting back into that really unique opening pattern. Again, it was kind of like hearing the drums for the first time this week.
Yeah, well, whenever Chris is doing that palm muting part, George's tempos are not straightforward tempos. I mean, he's doing some really off tempo stuff in there.
Right.
And so he goes from the da na 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 na, where it's like do ba do do ba do do ba do do bum to the
yeah.
And then he goes on the bana on the subsidize your nightclubs. And so I love the way that Jord ties together that almost Green Day style intro to the with that little like, I just love the way that he mixed it up to tie those two sections together. So you have these two really straightforward sections and then this really wonky section underneath Chris's palm muting part. And I'm like, man, this is just special, because if you think about what was going on with like a band like Lagwagon in that era, like they were doing records like Duh and Trashed, which were like, they were trying to get really heavy on them and really like complicated. Like if you listen to Derek Plord's Lagwagon drumming on those early records, I mean, it is wild stuff. And so Propaganda, who would go on to be, such a heavier band, they were already they were doing them and Lagwagon like switched places. Like Lagwagon started off pretty heavy and shreddy and then went a lot more melodic, whereas Propaganda started off a lot more melodic and then went a lot heavier and shreddier. So I really like the trajectory of those two bands, how they kind of almost like reverse places as like the metal-ish band on Fat Records. So that was really funny, but I just love the way that Jord ties together this song. And like, you can see other bands playing this. Like there was a band in Denver, Colorado who covered this, some young guys named Mission Accomplished. And if you watch the drummer in that cover video on YouTube, this is such a cool song on the drums, and I really like what Jord did. But if you look at videos of Propaganda playing in '93 on YouTube and you watch Jord, like he looks like he's like working super hard. But then if you watch them in like 96 or 97, something happens where Jord's playing becomes a heck of a lot more relaxed in those 3 years. So there's a huge progression in Jord's playing between 93 and 96, where he just looks a lot more comfortable behind the kit, a little less hunched over. And he also got a haircut. So maybe Jord cutting off his super long hair made him a little more relaxed. But I'm kidding. But you know what I mean. So what did you think about the guitars in this song? Because it's got some licks, and it's centered around this trademark riff, sort of how Showdown is centered around its central riff as well. So tell me what you thought about these licks on the guitar.
You mentioned a few of the melodies already, and that's really the word that comes to mind the most. Especially, I think what's cool is the really fast, like triplets or 16 notes that are thrown in, the palm muted ones. And that kind of hints at Chris's metal roots, and then where they would kind of go back to, maybe not necessarily as playing, but as fans of music, as they progress as musicians, the guitar work is going to get far more metallic. And it flows into the walking riff that you mentioned. The palm muted. I saw a few videos of covers, and it just like the fingers going back and forth. It looks just like their fingers are walking. And that's kind of cool because it's sandwiched between power chords. And I really like the transition then into where it says they subsidize.
Oh yeah.
And how that walking riff is no longer palm muted. It gets louder and it gets lower as it moves down to the low E string. And that's just a really, really clever and distinct transition. And then with Till Your Freedom of Assembly, that part, it really sounds huge. I mean, even with only Chris singing, it honestly has a sing-along vibe there with the big power chords and just how large everything sounds. You can clearly, I could visualize a group of people singing along to that because it just has this great sing-along upbeat vibe to it.
Like, I can't believe it's so hard for me to believe that I can't find dozens of videos of them playing this online.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, it really is shocking because it is a catchy tune. And, you know, like I said, it's centered around that trademark central riff in the song, but I love the palm muted guitar under You're All the Same and how it lets up on the palm into the lick that leads into the they subsidize your night. So it's like and then it lets off na 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 and then it gets loud. And those small little details remind me of something that I was always in awe of. One of my good friends, my buddy Derek, that I grew up with in St. Louis. He was just like, you know, from like 7th grade on, he was just on another planet guitar wise. Like, he just got it. You know what I mean? We played in a band together from like 7th grade to 11th grade. And he and the bassist in the band, the bassist was like a trained cellist and Derek was like this just guitar virtuoso. And I'm just like this talentless drummer just hacking away, trying to like play like Scott Rayner from Blink-182. And these guys were just so full of talent and they just understood their instruments so well. And I see a lot of Chris in this song and what my buddy Derek was doing and like just blowing my mind in like 7th grade onwards. And Derek went on to play in a St. Louis band called Form Follows Failure with Jevin, who went on to play in much the same, Josh, who went on to play in Break the Silence and who was our guest on the Resisting Tyrannical Government episode. And then my other friend, Matt, who went on briefly to play in the band Near Miss that was on Fearless Records. But Derek had these like technical abilities that I see so clearly in Chris's early playing. And we discovered Propagandy like together because when I may or may not have stolen How to Clean Everything from that guy Steve's house when I was recording a record with Derek and I listened to How to Clean Everything together like the first time. And so, you know, he and I were like discovering that music together. And it's just so cool to listen to this song of these early days, like 90s songs, and just being right back in that moment of hearing those guitar tones, hearing those guitar licks, seeing like what my friend is able to pull off, and like just being lucky enough to be behind a drum set, just trying to keep up with him. And I just get the impression that that's how Chris was too. So I love this song on guitar. I think it really rocks. I think the first 3 songs are just strung together so well on this record. Yeah. But, you know, as far as the bass goes, I know I'm going to catch some hell for this, but the bass lick on this reminds me of Mike Dirnt from Green Day on Dookie. And I mean that in a good way because Mike Dirnt is a hell of a bass player and Dookie is a hell of a good bass record. And so just the bass riff just reminds me, like, I almost feel like Mike Dirnt could be back there playing it. It's just like recorded in a studio like that didn't record Dookie, so it just sounds different. But I just feel like that's just kind of what the bass feels like to me. It's got that mid-tempo, big early 90s sound, very bright, very energetic, very catchy, and that's just where my emotions go whenever I listen to this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and what about the elephant in the room, the vocals, since it's just so different from the rest of the band's catalog, Greg? What stands out there?
So, knowing how Chris basically shifted his vocal delivery style between How to Clean Everything and Let's Talk More Rock, I'm super disappointed that he didn't discover his more natural vocal style in time to record vocals on How to Clean Everything. And, you know, I understand like this, like the influences of like those early 90s days of like the super snotty vocal delivery,
Right.
late 80s no effects, early 90s no effects. Like it's just, you know, it's unescapable in those days. And, you know, you throw in a little bit of snarl. And, you know, I love the songs on this record, but the snarl vocal, it's just not my thing.
Sure.
And because it doesn't feel like Chris to me, because I know what Chris would become as a vocalist. So this record feels like the least like Chris that I have come to know and love, because the snarl doesn't feel real to me. Do you know what I mean?
Right. It is definitely it seems like a choice. It seems intentional. It's somewhat time stamped within the context of the early 90s punk scene. And I don't love it.
Yeah. You know, and I don't either, but this record is just so, it's such a snapshot of a moment in time.
Right.
And like, I wish there was I wish there was a version online of Propaganda playing this song now, you know, in like their, you know, people in their 30s and 40s and heading into their 50s. Because, you know, there's like that mosh cam video in Australia that we've talked about a ton of times where like the recording is magnificent, but they played Anti-Manifesto at that show in Chris's current style of vocal delivery. And dude, it's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I found a quote from Chris, and he says, in relation to How to Clean Everything, he said, I dig it. We still play songs from that record. When I hear them and I play them, the message still resonates with me, and I can see the 20-year-old Chris writing those songs. It's still fun. I still get a kick out of it. When we play them these days, they seem seamless in the set with the new songs. There's a bit of a difference in terms of the depth and dimension, but they're still fun to play. I just don't like when I hear that record. Like when I hear that actual record, that recording, that moment in time, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, turn that thing off. But I don't regret it. I'm not trying to hide that record from anybody. I just can't lie to people and tell them we're going to make another How to Clean Everything. So I honestly think that's an amazing quote from Chris. I honestly agree with him. There's so much great playing on this record from when they recorded this. I mean, if you go listen to Anti-Manifesto on the Mosh Cam video and you hear Chris sing it in his present vocal style, it sounds not too far off from fitting on Victory Lap.
Right.
Like it could sit side by side in the track list with Call Before You Dig with Chris's current vocal style, and it wouldn't even miss a beat. It's a great tune. So I can totally understand Chris's thoughts about How to Clean Everything and the sound of the record, because knowing what we know now about what the band would go on to do sound-wise, this record leaves a lot to be desired, vocal performance-wise, and so be it. You know what I mean? I just kind of wish they would play it live so I could hear what it would sound like if in Chris's voice today.
Right. I think I'm less likely to skip older songs in a really good live video set if it's from 2017 or 2016.
Yeah,
I like hearing the updated performance version of it.
Absolutely. That Mosh Cam Anti-Manifesto video is friggin' awesome. I was like pumping my fists on YouTube because that's what I do now in my life is I like watch videos on YouTube and go, damn, I'm on YouTube.
Hey, this is HVIP. I would say when it first came out, it gave me hope that people saw the hypocrisy in the world and we could do something to change it. Now, it just reminds me of a happier time when I was young and naive and thought the world would change.
Hello. I saw your post to talk about how to clean everything. Pardon me. My name is Chris Friesen. I'm from Toronto, Canada. And I just want to say I really love the idea of we all need a kick in the ass. I think it's a less judgy, positive approach, and it's a good reminder to everybody to continue the work you're doing. And so thank you guys for all the work you do, and I'm going to keep listening. Have a great day. Bye.
Hello, Keith and Greg. I grew up in a very Mormon, very conservative household. And when I was about 15 years old, I got my hands on How to Clean Everything. And what I love about that album is, you know, whenever I felt like rebelling or acting out, I could throw on that album and feel like I was doing something wrong and dangerous. And it would feel great. All right. Thanks for the show, guys.
Hey, this is Josh. You want to know what I like about How to Clean Everything? It's like a perfect foundation for what propaganda would become. It's self-deprecating, but at the same time very smart. It's a little personal with songs like Who Will Help Me Bake This Bread, but then far-reaching political concepts are just they're sort of broaching it. I'm telling you, How to Clean Everything, I know you guys don't care for it that much, but it's the basis for everything the band is.
Okay, should we go on to the lyrics and the ideas?
Yeah, and what really stands out, Greg, of course, and I think the whole song, I mean, of all of the lyrics, is really the opening and the closing lines, like this bookmarked idea and phrasing of words. So 3 choices, 1 bullet, 1 trigger, guess who gets to pull it. The phrasing here is just incredibly distinct and it's creative. And I'm curious to hear how you interpret that. And I see it somewhat as being between the hammer and the anvil, that some of us have a choice, but the options are varying degrees of harm, suffering, and trauma. Regarding 1 leader, then, so after this, 1 leader, 1,000 slaves for every throne, there's 1,000 graves. Regarding that part and how people with power, wealth, or political, or both, their daily decisions determine the lives of people they'll never meet. Policies are often put in place without the most vulnerable and the marginalized in mind. And it reminds me of this quote from a Hitchhiker's Guide that's been circling the interwebs in the last year, in the election year. And it says, one of the many major problems with governing people is that of whom you get to do it, or rather of who manages to get people to let them to do it to them. To summarize, it is a well-known fact that those people who must want to rule people are, ipso facto, those least suited to do it. To summarize the summary, anyone who is capable of getting themselves made president should on no account be allowed to do the job. And I think that applies not just to elected positions in the federal government or in state or local government, but to CEOs, to corporate presidents, and in other positions of power. I mean, just think about how many painfully misinformed and inept individuals represent us right now.
Yeah, and these lines, like that opening line that you talked about, 3 choices, 1 bullet, guess who gets to pull it. So it's such an opening line, such an image. And I picture like I'm watching, like that I'm in a movie, right? I'm watching a movie scene where there is 3 people in blindfolds on their knees on the ground. And I am like a prisoner, essentially. And I am dragged out of my prison cell and I'm handed a gun and my blindfold is ripped off. And they put a gun in my hand and they say, 3 choices, 1 bullet, 1 trigger. Guess who gets to pull it?
Oh.
And all of a sudden I have to choose the person who is blindfolded in front of me that I'm going to execute. And I say, I don't want to kill anybody. And they say, kill 1 or we will kill 1,000. And I'm like, whoa, man. It's like totally creepy. It's like that philosophical dilemma of the train running down the tracks, and there is a track diversion. And if the track goes, and if you divert the track one way, it kills a 100-year-old person. And if you divert the track the other way, it kills a 10-year-old person. And you have to choose which way you're going to divert the train track because someone's going to die. And that's what this opening line reminds me of. It's like these like dilemmas of like, who do we allow to die in our philosophical and moral and ethical dilemmas. And, you know, if we think about the 1 leader, 1,000 slaves, for every throne, there's 1,000 graves. So we got a super sweet voicemail about that line. So here is the voicemail about the liner notes for that exact specific lyric, which I found to be super funny.
Hey, this is Patrick. So how to clean everything. I don't know how well you've analyzed the liner notes, but the liner notes are so great because there is a joke about how it was created in proportion to the size of their penises. And then 2, I think there's that line where it's for every throne there's 1,000 graves. 1,000 graves? For every throne there's 1,000 graves. I forget how many graves it is, but the joke in the liner notes says, give or take a grave or 2. So, I mean, the whole record is great, but I love, kind of, you dig into the liner notes and there's all sort of like little ridiculous Easter eggs and probably pentagrams and bullshit kind of scrawled in there. It's great. Yeah. So that's it. Okay. Bye.
Awesome. So the line about leaders and slaves is pretty interesting. It seems to suggest that due to the leader on the throne, the result will be death. And this is eerie in the age of COVID when we think of how reckless and antithetical to fact, logic, and reason the previous U.S. administration was, and how regardless of whatever nonsense was being peddled as quote unquote alternative facts, folks would lap it up at the trough essentially. Like if you voted for this, like you just like are like lapping it up. Like that's just what my perception was. But what's also interesting is the way the people underneath the leader can be subversive in other ways. So if there are people underneath the leader who are being told to shape up and do X, Y, Z, they don't always do it. And they find creative ways of subverting the orders that they are being given. So instead of being one of the 1,000 slaves, they can figure out creative ways of subverting where they won't always be noticed. So for example, I'm picturing somebody like Anthony Fauci, who was doing interviews while 45 was still POTUS, and he was appearing in places like The Daily Show with Trevor Noah and being much more candid in those interviews than he would be at the podium in the White House press briefing room. So I like the idea of where and when it's possible to be subversive, even if you're believed to be one of those 1,000 slaves under the one leader. And, you know, even in our wacky system where subservience has been rewarded and quote unquote disloyalty has been severely punished for the last several years, I'm like, ooh, so we have this one leader and these quote unquote henchmen or slaves or whatever, but who is, you know, taking it in like mildly subversive directions and doing what they can to enact change where possible. You know what I mean?
That's such a cool takeaway that I didn't interpret or gather from this, since most of my thoughts were pretty cynical and negative in response, but using that for then something positive, I think that's a really great takeaway, Greg.
Yeah, and I think that's what Chris is trying to do in this song. I think that he's trying to realize that he's part of a system which wants him to be just a, you know, like lapping it up at the trough, mindless drone, just mindlessly purchasing things online and just like, you know, watching television and intoxicating himself with mind altering and intoxicating substances that he buys from massive conglomerate corporations. Like the huge systems that he's writing about want us to behave and believe in certain things and do certain actions. And that's what Chris is pushing back against. And even if he's only mildly subversive, I think that there's a lot that he can that he thinks that he can accomplish within writing this. And so we go on to the next lyric. You're all the same, just part of their machine, perpetuate their dream. And, you know, the idea that we're all free is almost like a pretty big sick joke at this point. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like I'm quote unquote free, but what does that even mean? And Chris has really complicated my views of what being free means through propaganda songs, and, you know, things like he's written about like Adventures in Zoocosis. But, you know, we're all under the thumb of our bank debt, our student loans, our interest rates, stock market manipulators, auto loans, etc. We are, you know, essentially chess pieces to the ultra rich who talk down to us about quote unquote saving and investing responsibly, but then defending their positions against people making a living wage that keeps up with inflation because it's bad for business for the people at the very top. And it's sickening, but it's also beautiful to watch the illusion be shattered about the free market in this recent GameStop and Reddit situation.
Right.
Where groups like pulled one over on the billionaires who were trying to tank companies with stock short sells, only to have the situation completely reversed on them. So they were forced to buy back in and lose billions. And it was just such a tremendous delight to watch these scumbags whine and moan, and to realize their dream of keeping normal people in perpetual servitude can be discovered, and the tables can be turned seemingly rather easily. And, you know, I hope we see a lot more of that in the future, but it showed maybe we're not all satisfied to remain part of the machine, and that we do have the ability to clog up their system and ding the bank accounts of those who think they have this place on lockdown. You know what I mean? Like, they think that they have it all, but maybe they don't. And so that line, you're all the same, part of the machine, perpetuate their dream. Like, there are ways of ruining their dream instead of perpetuating their dream. We just saw a very clear example of how to ruin the perpetuation of that dream. Does that make sense?
Right. And I think with the first two parts you read, Greg, you're all the same, you're just part of the machine. Thematically, I really see an overlap on the first three songs of How to Clean Everything, as each of those tracks addresses conformity, complacency, and then perhaps apathy. And I think often within this punk scene, within his audience, the people that he's singing to, people who cosplay maybe as rebels and outcasts, but benefit from and contribute to systems of oppression, they pretend to resist. And of course, at the risk of repeating myself, since you and I have offered these clarifiers before, I'm making this observation as someone who freely admits that I am not a rebel, I'm not a radical, I'm not an activist. Had I been into punk music when this album came out, Propaganda would have been singing to me. And if they played this in 2021, they'll still be singing to me. And, you know, like that part, I don't know. I guess I didn't think too much about the first two lines, but it was really what came afterwards, because I've heard that line, Greg, the subsidize your malls, so many times. I never really saw it as a literal statement, but just looking up and doing a little bit of reading, I read a couple examples, and one was in Kansas City, the Country Club Plaza. According to an article I read from The Hill, the plaza was determined to be blighted in 1997, which made it eligible for economic development subsidies. And this means that for 23 years, 100% of the increase in property taxes paid and 50% of the increased economic activities taxes, such as sales, use, and income taxes, were returned to the developer to be used to offset costs associated with renovating and maintaining the plaza property itself. These are costs that would normally be borne by private enterprises, but in this case, in Kansas City and in many other cities, they can be imposed on taxpayers. You said the illusion of the free market. So this isn't unique. The subsidies can come in the form of property tax exemptions, sales tax rebates, job tax credits, tax increment financing, and the tax breaks and taxpayer subsidies for Walmart alone and the Walton family total an estimated $7.8 billion a year. Amazon has been cutting such deals in and around Chicago since 2015, winning tax breaks and public incentives to build something like around 40 warehouses, winning about $740 million in taxpayer funded incentives. And that's just Northeast Illinois. And then this puts the burden of paying taxes on small businesses and individuals, as land value will often grow, but the percentage of that value that the city collects in taxes is in decline. And elected officials try to justify these deals on the basis of job creation and economic growth, but numerous studies repeatedly show that subsidizing retail development does more economic harm than good. And I found an example in St. Louis and the neighboring cities and counties. They diverted something like $5.8 billion in public tax dollars to finance private development. And more than 80% of the funds supported the construction of new chain stores and shopping centers. And the region saw virtually no sustained economic growth.
Ugh.
Greg, contrast that with how hard it's been to pass relief packages that support just, okay, the context of the show, independent music videos.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I am thankful that the COVID relief bill passed by Congress will help independent music businesses that have remained closed during the pandemic. $15 billion in funding to venues, independent movie theaters, cultural institutions from the Save Our Stages Act that's folded into the $900 billion stimulus bill. I mean, in 2019, the total revenue of live industry is something like 9.5 billion. Around 80% of live revenue comes directly from ticket sales, while sponsorships and merchandise generate another 20. So you shared something not long ago from the bassist Brian Cook of Russian Circles, and he tweeted, "Today in governments that actually value artists and give a shit about taking care of people during COVID, Switzerland just compensated Russian Circles for the full guarantee of our canceled tour date in 2020." And looking further at this, by October of last fall, the federal government had given out $4 trillion in grants, loans, and tax breaks, more expensive than the war in Afghanistan. Half of the money, about $2.3 trillion, went to businesses that were oftentimes not required to show that they had been adversely impacted by the pandemic, or they weren't required to keep workers employed. The total value in tax breaks was something like $650 billion. And again, to businesses that laid off workers. Almost $500 billion went to the Federal Reserve to stabilize the markets, and U.S. grants and loans helped the wealthy and companies that laid off workers, and individuals, people, received 1/5 of the aid. And I tweeted something the other night that every once in a while, doing research for this show, and even if these are just numbers, but this is the reality that we live in one varying degree or another. And that was just like the Walmart details and the shopping malls, in realizing how deep these roots go, while individuals are vilified and ridiculed for actually needing some assistance. Like it just goes to show that in numerous ways, like the system isn't broken, it's like shattered.
Yeah. And also like the notion that people might deserve $15 an hour as a minimum wage, you know what I mean? Like this is the reality that we live in. And I think a lot about that line, they subsidize your nightclubs and they subsidize your malls. They herd and brand the masses within painted prison walls.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot about the prison wall visual. Oh, wait, but before I say that, I have to really give you major props for going hog wild on Missouri in this episode. I am so grateful. And I bet our buddy Lang Huck is out there like pumping his fists like, yeah, Missouri. So I love that because, you know, my home state. And it's just really interesting to me. I'm really glad you dug those up. But anyway, so back to the prison walls.
Yeah.
Visual. I don't know how many people out there have listened to Chris's Adventures in Zoocosis podcast episode that he did on Catastrophic Break with Consensus Reality, but it is essential. And I've almost come to see this song as the first page of a story that concludes with Adventures in Zoocosis.
That's a great observation.
So I see these as like bookends, right? And I loved Chris's Adventures in Zoocosis episode because it talks about how we create these comfortable little environments for ourselves, but we rarely venture out beyond them once we've nestled in. And so I love what you did because you explained so many things about the subsidizing of industry and the vilification of people that we witness every day in our country. And I had a different take on this line. So I'm really glad that we came at this specific lyric with different perspectives. But so anyway, Chris's Zoocosis episode talks about we create these comfortable little environments, right? And we rarely venture out because we've nestled in them. We've burrowed in them. We have created comfort within them and ease and lack of stress within them. And this year has been hands down the biggest indicator of how true this painted prison walls line is for me personally. I live in this little village suburb called Snyder, New York, just outside of Buffalo. And within 4 or 5 blocks, it has grocery stores that I can walk to, yoga studios, dentists and doctors, gas stations, nice little restaurants that deliver and do takeout. My dog's vet is 2 blocks away. The dog's groomer is 2 blocks away. My kids' friends are all over the place. My kids' school is 0.8 of a mile, 0.8 of a mile down the street. And I work from home. And I have this 6-block minimum security prison that I live in voluntarily. And, you know, COVID has obviously exacerbated that because I'm actually a responsible person who cares about the world and the people who live in my neighborhood. But the only time I leave it right now is to go running or when I randomly flee the confines of my 6-block minimum security prison radius because I can't take it anymore. I get in my car and I just drive and I'm like, oh my God, I'm out. But guess where I am an hour later? I'm right back inside that 6-block radius inside my painted prison wall. So to me, this is like almost like the early 20s Chris realization of the minimum security prison idea that we create for ourselves, while Zoocosis is him coming to the grips that he will live and die within these minimum security prison walls that keep him warm, plumbed, and ventilated. So Head, Chest, or Foot opens the book and Zoocosis closes it. So my question is, where's my friggin' subsidy, man? I want give me some subsidies. You know what I mean? I'm already in the painted prison wall. How about some subsidies for me too, since I'm already living in that?
And that line really is, it addresses the economic, but also just the social, psychological, and emotional problems that we face in this country and elsewhere, obviously Canada, but you know, in here where I live in Indiana and there in New York. But I think my big takeaway from the things that I shared, Greg, and this definitely relates to what you shared as well, is that rugged individualism and meritocracy are so ingrained in our national identity, myths, and popular history that government assistance to struggling people, as I said, they're maligned and people are dehumanized, while corporate welfare goes almost unnoticed. And a pandemic can't even shake us free of those illusions. And Chomsky didn't coined this, I'm going to call it an axiom, stating that the free market is socialism for the rich and markets for the poor and state protection for the rich. But he argues and he shows that the wealthy use free market propaganda to justify imposing greater economic risks upon the lower classes, just like you were talking about, like hedging the bets and hoping that GameStop doesn't do well.
Yep.
While being insulated from the rigors of the market by the political and the economic advantages that being wealthy affords. And likewise, in his Minister to the Valley speech in 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. remarked, "Whenever the government provides opportunities and privileges for white people and rich people, they call it subsidized. And when they do it for Negro and poor people, they call it welfare." The fact is that everybody in this country lives on welfare. Suburbia was built with federally subsidized credit,
Yup.
and highways that take our white brothers out to the suburbs were built with federally subsidized money to the tune of 90%.
And VA loans and FHA loans were racially exclusive, by the way.
Of course, right. Everybody is on welfare in this country. The problem is that we all too often have socialism for the rich and rugged free enterprise capitalism for the poor. That's the problem.
It's a sick joke. It really is. It's an absolutely sick, disgraceful joke. Did you come up with any? Yeah, go ahead.
And how many flags have you seen where it's the Bernie logo and it's socialism sucks? I mean, it's everywhere here in Indiana. And just the lack of understanding or the lack of willingness to be honest in our conversation, in our wording, in our use of terms, they're so misrepresented, they're so strawmanned that, I mean, you can't even argue with people who say that, because they've painted things into a boogeyman while ignoring the benefits for themselves and the country as a whole.
Yeah, it's such a huge problem that I feel like I'm going to have a conniption fit if I start going into it anymore. It's so pervasive as well. If you walk around my neighborhood, the wealthiest people who live in my neighborhood don't even shovel their sidewalks of snow. You know what I mean? People actually need to walk around to the bus stops and things like that. And the richest people in my neighborhood don't even shovel. And like, I'm a runner, so I notice when somebody doesn't shovel their sidewalk and I have to go out into the street and essentially risk my life. But there's a literal castle like a mile away from my house.
Gosh.
And they never shovel their sidewalk. And I'm like, wow, you really don't care about anyone, do you? And I guarantee you get every benefit that society has to offer. I don't have many good things to say about that kind of stuff.
That's okay.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on the line, "Until your freedom of assembly becomes the missiles they create, or just a mass delusion dancing this music you hate"?
It's probably the one I thought about the most, and I really don't think I have an interpretation or anything to offer. So
I don't
Greg,
either.
If you have some, interesting.
I couldn't really wrap my brain around it. And it's well delivered in the song, and obviously it sounds great. And the rhyme scheme is strong. But the imagery of people like, in a state of mass delusion, pumping their fists to these like rebel songs in a crowd while like then going to McDonald's after the show, and driving their parents' BMW with their friends up and down the highway to go see punk rock shows and then eat Taco Bell and McDonald's. Like that's the images that come to mind for me, is like we go to these punk shows in like our parents' cars when we're teenagers, and then, like go to the Death Factory fast food restaurant and like, and we think that we're like, yeah, punk rock, man. So that's just kind of like what that line has me thinking about. But, I didn't really have a ton of thoughts about that song. Maybe that line, maybe I kind of just missed over it in my my busy, hectic week. But maybe some folks can send in their favorite interpretations on that line, and we can solicit some cool ideas. But I bet you have something to say about, but I'm not the same, not part of your machine. I'll jeopardize their dream. What do you see Chris doing here?
Well, I'm going to tie it in with the next part, if that's okay, Greg.
Yeah, go for it.
And I'll continue on. I'd rather be imprisoned in a George Orwellian world than this pacified society of happy boys and girls. So, oh boy, Orwell, what a time to mention him right now, with so many politicians and insurrection apologists misnomering inconveniences equating to dystopian, despotic government. A book contract, for example, being canceled, or Trump and Nazi Twitter trolls being booted from Twitter. That's somehow living in 1984. And this is coming from the same people who say not everything you dislike is fascism, while there are actual literal experts like Ruth Ben-Ghiat and Robert Paxton and Jason Stanley who draw a direct line between the GOP, Trump, and fascism in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm. And, I love that line. It's like Chris wants to be locked away like Winston Smith with his free thoughts and ideas, then go down the rabbit hole of the ever looping Netflix algorithm. But like,
Yeah.
he's saying like, if you're just going to pump me full of propaganda, but it means I get to walk around the street, screw you. Just put me in prison instead, where I can daydream to my heart's content. Kind of reminds me of an Anton Chekhov short story called The Bet, where a guy agrees to be locked in a room for a long time, but he gets to read everything he ever wants, and he like lives a million lives within the cell. So it's like Chris is saying, well, at least if I'm in this cell, I can just like live my own, go on these adventures in my mind, But speaking about the Orwellian stuff, I got some thoughts, man. Orwellian, as everybody out there knows, is currently being bandied about lazily by folks who seem to not really have a complete idea of what they are talking about. And I'm no big city Orwell expert or anything, but I'm pretty sure that private corporations canceling Josh Hawley's book contract because he openly egged on an invading mob into the seat of government in the country is not Orwellian. In fact, I'd say it is actually the free market that said that down-home good old boy who happened to be educated at Stanford and Yale in coastal elite territories that he so commonly derides in an effort to win points with populations of folks whose economies have been left behind and forgotten about by American government for generations. I would say, that I was unaware that a canceled book contract from Simon & Schuster constitutes a boot stomping on a human face forever. Okay? If I write a book proposal to Harvard University Press, and then I incite an insurrection against a couple of centuries old democracy, and Harvard University Press says, shucks, we really should just keep going with that book. I would really question their judgment. And so when Hawley says that it is Orwellian that his book contract was canceled, I'm like, okay, so is Simon & Schuster saying we're not going to publish your book, like having a boot stomping on your face forever? Obviously, no. Orwellian actually is when like a totalitarian regime crushes dissent through violence and the perversion of language. And hilariously, every time these folks talk about Orwellian, 1984 sales skyrocket and around times of bad national mood. So you look at the book sales of 1984 around Edward Snowden, skyrocket. You look at it after Kellyanne Conway said alternative facts in 2017, skyrocketing sales of 1984. You look at it during the 2021 national crisis, skyrocketing sales. So Orwellian appears to become a thing that is indisputably bad, but I think folks are willfully twisting it to just deride whatever the heck they are mad about, such as feeling like they're being quote unquote canceled. And that's another thing. To me, cancel culture or whatever, when my view of this is that of so-called cancel culture is that people almost always are calling out somebody for saying something that is outdated, racist, misogynist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, etc. And they get used to getting away with saying horrible things about groups of people. And now they're, not being given the privilege to get away with it anymore. And now they're yelling it's cancel culture. You know what I mean? So like they're being asked to be more decent people to all people, and they're saying, I'm being canceled. And, they used to get away with saying horrible things, and now they're not being given that privilege anymore. And now they're yelling it's cancel culture, that they're not being given total liberty to say terrible things about groups of people anymore. And I realize people will see it differently than me. I acknowledge that. But being forced to be decent to groups of people who comes from backgrounds that have been historically marginalized does not mean you're being canceled. Having a free market book contract canceled because you were a major part of inciting an insurrection against a lawfully elected president-elect after dozens of failed lawsuits went nowhere in the nation's judicial system, and then being called out for it isn't Orwellian. It's called a consequence, Josh Hawley. It's a consequence of what you have done. It's not Orwellian. Your human face is not being stomped on by a boot forever. You are literally inside the U.S. Capitol at work every day, where you can go to the floor of the Senate and just say whatever you want. But he's never faced a consequence before. So this is a very novel concept for this very special, delicate Senator baby. No offense to babies. And anyway, Orwellian isn't really free speech absolutist doctrine. It's about degrading knowledge. It's about degrading truth. It's about degrading language through propaganda that causes people's deaths. Sort of like how January 6th, 2021 has a body count, and Josh Hawley can just step up to the microphone on the floor of the U.S. Senate and say pretty much whatever he wants. Much to the disgust of about 1.3 million Missourians, I might add, who voted against him in 2018. And maybe a few are disgusted who did vote for him. But, interestingly, the threat and creep of totalitarianism, as we've seen the last 5 years in the U.S., can create a sense of phantasmagoria as well, like a dream state, where everything is both true and everything is both imagined. Like if you voted for the administration, the descent into totalitarianism. If you voted against the administration, the descent into totalitarianism was obvious. If you voted for the administration, the descent into totalitarianism was nonsense. So it was either totally obvious or it was total nonsense that we were descending into totalitarianism. And, so I got thoughts on this, man. Obviously, Chris would see this as a boot stomping on the human face forever interpretation in this propaganda song, and not the half-baked, nonsensical politician interpretation, which is actually just a buzzword to use to get people who haven't read the book to say, yeah, Orwellian. And folks who are saying it wrong know this.
Absolutely.
They're pandering to people who haven't read the book and won't bother to find out, and will not misuse that term and they will now misuse that term forever. And when someone who points out that they are misusing the term, they'll just seek to exhaust the person in threads of phantasmagoria based on whatever someone on TV scared them into thinking. Makes me sad.
It's just like Holly claiming it was a First Amendment issue, because it's simply what his base is going to be riled up by, because they don't know any better.
After 60 plus failed lawsuits.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm just challenging it because it's the right thing to do. And I'm like, dude, 60 failed lawsuits and then you challenge it? No. And then having your book contract canceled? Not Orwellian. Okay. Yeah. It just makes me furious. And I'm from that state. And, so I actually care that this person represents people that I care about and have known my whole entire life. And anyway, that's my long story. But, I really like that line. And, I also saw a famous video of propaganda in 1994 at a gig in Southern California where they play outside. I think a lot of people have seen that video by now. And in that video, Chris talks about realizing that all of his spending dollars were going to corporations that didn't share his values and that only sought his addiction through his body and mind to their drivel and garbage. So Chris is talking about this on this video, that he's like realizing that his spending on the things that he's spending are going to perpetuate these cycles in this machine. And then he's like, whoa, I'm part of it. And he realizes that if he stops giving his money to these people, to these corporations, these entities, that he steps outside the system. And I bet he has spent a lot less money on horrible things than most people in the world, because he realized that so early in his life. But I'd be curious what kinds of, addictive things are in Chris's house now, like streaming services or addictive corporate services. I'd be curious to know, what they do as a family, knowing what he's known his entire life and feeling like he doesn't want to be a part of that. And, I really like that comply resist playthrough video that he did on his Patreon, because there's a giant jigsaw puzzle on the table in his kitchen when he's playing that comply resist playthrough video. Because it makes me feel like they're spending their time in other mentally stimulating ways, besides, the doom scroll. But he also deleted all of his posts on Twitter and all of his Instagram posts. He's no longer providing free content to the people who are curious what, his thoughts in life are like at any given moment. He's like projecting his thoughts and images of his life like out into the world less. And I think he's jeopardizing Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey's dreams of a voluntary surveillance state. It's pretty awesome. And at the very same exact moment, I am latched into our Propagandy Pod social media like a brainwashed goober, and it makes me think a lot. So that's a really cool line. I had all kinds of thoughts there on the Orwellian stuff.
Well, Greg, let's transition into the next part then. I'd rather know my enemies and let you know the same, whose windows to smash and whose tires to slash and where to point the fucking blame. So this is really interesting to read, especially knowing songs like Letters to a Young Anus and hearing Chris talk on his podcast about wishing he hadn't been as outspoken, that perhaps he could have been more subversive, having greater impact by avoiding the conflict. And maybe that's being realistic. Maybe it's just him getting older. But I'm thankful for this outspoken, brash, combative messaging era, even if I was more living vicariously through that. And I wouldn't, of course, do those things myself, as I don't really want to engage with people I don't have the same values with. I don't have the mental or emotional bandwidth
or the time,
or the time, right, to try to convince people to not be terrible. I'd rather just put the effort in my classroom, promoting critical thinking, lifting marginalized voices, and modeling empathy, rather than getting into it with someone who just wants to be right and not better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that line also reminds me of the fact that social classes of people who make below a certain amount of money have tended throughout history to be racially antagonistic towards each other, right? Like super powerful, wealthy classes convinced lower socioeconomic status whites that they could one day be in those mansions too. And so they are like, stick with me. So instead of the low socioeconomic status across all races banding together to create more powerful systems to lessen the complete control that insanely rich groups of people have, they've managed to break it up along racial lines. And Tim Wise has done so much incredible writing about the racial antagonism between certain socioeconomic statuses. And it's just so interesting. It's like, let's really find out who the real enemy here is. Right. And then we can really make the world a better place and help lift up a lot of people who are living with very little.
Well, you want to bring it home with the last line, Greg?
Heck yeah. So one future, two choices, oppose them or let them destroy us. So we go from 3 choices to 2 choices. What do you make of that?
I don't know. I don't know if I understand if there is a literal meaning of the three. That, I mean, head, chest, or foot, I hear it almost as like a children's game of, hitting someone if they've dropped, if they've lost in whatever game they're playing, you get to punch someone.
Yeah.
But now these games that we've played where you have choice of harming others, that they've gotten bigger, and now the choice is just two, that either we, join together different backgrounds and, as you said, classes and races, uh, to uh, to resist those with power. And I don't know, Greg, it appears that over time the band has evolved their thinking and their strategies, I think, how we oppose them. And while we're coming up to the 10-year anniversary of Occupy Wall Street, so much feels volatile while worsening income disparity, concentrations of wealth and power. But I also never really expected to see the sort of mass protests and resistance in 2020 following numerous police murders. Oppose them felt more possible, and there was and still is great hope for a consciousness that broke through the mainstream that could lead to sustaining change.
Yeah, in the very beginning of the song, it's like that three choices. So you have the head, the chest, or the foot. So where are you going to shoot, right? Or are you going to shoot yourself in the head and definitely die because you're a part of this system that you can't even see yourself going through life living? So it's like you realize this like massive system is very stacked against you, and you can just end it all right now if you just blow your brains out. Or you can shoot yourself in the foot and hobble yourself forever, but still live knowing you're a part of this system that you will never overcome. Or you can take the chance and you can shoot yourself in the chest, and you might live and you might die. Because like you might fully recover as well. So it's like, where are you going to shoot yourself? Or are you going to like shoot yourself in the head and just end it all now? Or are you going to shoot yourself in the foot and go through a life hobbled by your inability to overcome the barriers that are very clearly in place against you? So I really like that. But the two choices thing, I think this is about us actively choosing between a pacified life of apathy and rejecting that pacified life of apathy. Like, if you think about zoochosis, our creature comforts that we don't escape anymore, that we voluntarily confine ourselves within, I think that Chris is asking us to bust out a little bit. Just minor choices too. You know what I mean? Like little things can do big things. But anyway, that's just kind of my interpretation of it.
That was amazing. As you were describing that, Greg, I was nodding along because the title was never very clear to me. And that was such a perfect description that fits. I don't know that. Yes, that's
I
perfect.
could be totally
and
wrong.
No, I co-sign it. I think that is the right. but seriously, no, I really do think that was an eloquent and thoughtful breakdown of that analogy. And because I don't know, maybe it's me that I don't always think that I don't have those perhaps literary skills to break down something that isn't spelled out in further details or with further clues. But I want to come back to just another quote. And in Wages of Rebellion, Chris Hedges writes, "All you have to do is work hard, obey the rules, and believe in yourself. This myth is disseminated across the political spectrum. It is the essential message peddled by everyone from Oprah and the entertainment industry to the Christian right and positive psychologists. But this promise, as the masses of underemployed and unemployed are discovering, is a fiction." So my last thought is, what are we going to do now that we see these myths and false promises crumble? It seems as though that the answers to that question are far more open and out than any other time in my life than I remember.
Yeah. I agree. Did you find any really cool YouTube comments or anything about this tune?
The only one I found said, I don't know what I would have done back in high school if I didn't know punk music and propaganda.
Dude, I tell you what, I think about that all the time. And I was actually texting with one of my high school friends the other day, and I was like, man, can you believe we didn't turn out to be like little right-wing white supremacist Nazis?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, we lucked out. And I was like, dude, it's because of like bad religion and stuff. You know what I mean? Like we like lucked out so hard by just randomly stumbling upon these things, which forced us to think about people that we didn't know. You know what I mean? Like instead of being totally selfish, self-indulgent little buttheads who only cared about ourselves, like we incrementally grew to care about more and more people who live all over the world and not just in our little enclave of the world, in our cul-de-sacs. You know what I mean? Like it forced me to care about other human beings. And I think about this a lot. Like, whoa, there are so many little accidental things that could have happened where I would just become completely the opposite of what I am today. And I talked about that a lot in our The Only Good Fascist is a Very Dead Fascist episode, where I talked about how I could have like just gone these little extra things and turned out completely different. But man, I think about that a lot. Another comment I found is, so 10 years ago on YouTube, somebody wrote, their best album by my evaluation, and I'm sorry to say they could not be more wrong. So I'm just gonna throw some shade there. Someone also wrote, hey, is this the same singer as from NoFX, or is it just me? Who thinks their voices sound alike? Which is hilarious. Interestingly, I like Chris's vocal performance on the earlier demo version, maybe a little more, which I think was pretty funny. I was like, oh, this vocal's a little less like with the snarl. Still has the snarl, but it's a little less. Another one, I didn't find it. This isn't a comment, but if you search on YouTube, head, chest, or foot sped up, you can find a video where somebody increased the speed of the song by 35%, and it's really funny. And then my last one is about that I found under the How to Clean Everything 20th anniversary reissue. And this person wrote, I love how this is under the category education. Damn right it is. Which I loved. Keith, what's your big takeaway lesson for this this tune as we bring this episode in for a landing?
Well, I randomly caught the end of the movie Ghost World the other day, and there's a scene where Enid, played by Thora Birch, is helping her best friend, Scarlett Johansson's character, move into their new apartment. It's something that they had planned to do since high school, and it's really, really clear from her facial expressions, her body language, that Enid doesn't care about the curtains. She's not impressed by the hidden fold-down ironing board, and she's disappointed that her best friend is so willing to move on to the expectations of adulthood, getting a job, getting an apartment, buying kitchenware. So here I am at 36, like wondering if my excitement for buying a new cast iron Dutch oven, stressing out about losing some hair.
Oh, dude, I'm so bald. It's crazy.
Yeah. Constantly browsing a list of records that I want to buy. And if the things that I hyper focus on that don't really matter are really just another form of apathy and passivity. And Greg, maybe I've been suspicious of the king, the tyrant on the throne, or the charlatan snake oil salesman, but I've not been on my guard regarding the long con, the slow rounding off of the jagged edges, like in Back to the Motor League, the settling in and the tuning out. And with so many issues, the social media, with changing personal and professional responsibilities, I guess I'm just saying that I'm hoping to find a level of engagement and action that's sustainable and proportionate to everything else that's swimming in around in my head.
I believe you will. I have faith that that will happen. And I think about stuff like this song all the time. It's pretty wild to have this realization pre-internet, because the world of 1990 and 91, when Chris was putting this song together, it seems so tame by comparison to what we have now as a reality. So non-distracting compared to today's nation of doom scrolling ding battery that we find ourselves in. And yes, we're still a smart society. I have to believe that, despite the fact that moronic things get plastered all over the news constantly, but smart people are totally addicted to reading about what the dumb people are doing, so we can stay afraid of how dumb we're getting. Like, imagine all the smart people out there who read the Washington Post and the Nation and the Atlantic and whatever, reading about all the dumb things that are happening in our world. That's where our energy is going. Smart, thoughtful people are fretting constantly about the dumbest things that are happening, because unfortunately those dumb things affect us. So we are forced to put our mental energy that could be going to great things to the crap.
Right.
And I hate that about myself, how often I pay attention to the total crap that's happening. You think I want to read constant news articles about QAnon Congress people? No. But I do it because I feel like this moral obligation to stay informed on what is happening. And that includes ingesting the dumbest things that are happening. It makes me so frustrated. But, it's like, anyway, so smart people are totally addicted to reading what the dumbest, or like what dumb people are doing. And so we can stay afraid of how dumb we're getting. It's like, oh my gosh, we're getting so dumb. But we're really not. Like, I don't really believe that if I get down to it. But think of how many articles, we've been subjected to recently about things that are like, whoa, I can't believe how dumb this is. And it's crazy how much of that I've read lately. And so this song makes me think a lot about a lot of the things, the same things that propaganda makes me think about, notably how I don't really feel in control of my own life. I'm a little cog in a wheel of productivity, and hilariously, podcasting is where I feel most free.
Yeah.
And how sad is that? Is that sad? It feels sad, right? Man, it's crazy. So anyway, go ahead and rate it. Rate the song.
This is hard. And any teacher will understand the dilemma of grading an essay or a project. Even if you're using a rubric, you usually get 7 or 8 examples in to where you go, wait a second, this isn't a C. This is more of a B, or this.
And you have to go regrade the first 7.
And you have to restart all over again and go back to the beginning, which I'm not going to do with all of the songs. But we just want to reiterate that this is what we spend the least amount of time on. And it's the least important, and it's mostly just to put a little capstone at the end of each episode. So I try to factor in context, where the band was in their career when this was written, what other bands were doing at the time, what I was doing in 1994, or even at the same age.
Yeah, I was collecting hockey cards.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to admit the albums that came after this, though. And I was 10 when this came out, and when I was the band's age when they wrote this album, I still thought walking around the mall and grabbing a turkey O'Toole from Bennigan's was pretty much the best time to spend with my friends. So who cares about my rating is what I'm saying. I'm going to give Head, Chest, or Foot a 2. I'm adjusting it slightly right now.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm not going to tell you if it was up or down. I'm going to give it a 2. I appreciate it more than I did 2 years ago or 5 years ago. but still this album as a whole is my Godfather 3 of Propaganda albums. It rounds out the experience, but for me, it doesn't really need to be revisited on its own.
Interesting. Well, and what's really interesting, if you think about what Propaganda 3 is, Propaganda 3 is today's Empire's tomorrow's Ashes. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I love that. All right. So I've been like back and forth. Do I really want to do these ratings anymore? But like the thing is, like, we're like almost 40 episodes into this thing. And like, I kind of feel like we just should see it through just now, even if we poke fun at ourselves every week. But I like this song less than last week's song, Nailing Descartes to the Wall. But because I ranked Descartes against the songs on Less Talk, More Rock that I like more, I've like painted myself into a corner on these ratings because I gave Descartes a 2, and it's obviously a totally rad song.
Mm-hmm.
And I like this one less than that song. So does this song get a 1.5? I guess, or 1.75? I guess it does. Like a 1.5 or a 1.75 against the entire Propaganda discography sounds okay to me for this one. But I also fully realize the immense importance of this album and song, as the voicemails that we've heard throughout this episode also attest. This is super important to people, and I fully respect that. But yeah, I love the guitar riff. It makes me feel young when I listen to this song. It makes me remember my friends, my youth, my teenage years. Makes me think about like Lagwagon Hoss and like Strung Out, Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues, and the stuff that I was listening to around this era as well. It makes me realize how little I actually took in of the ideas in this song until somewhat recently. Like, I'm like processing in real time, what does head, chest, or foot mean? Like, and I'm like, I've been listening to this record since like 1997 or something. Yeah. And so these lyrics were a pleasant little surprise for me. And I'm really kind of amazed at how long we went on with this. But that is our style. But compared to something like Without Love or Speculative Fiction or Duplicate Keys, Acaro, the things that come later, the other songs that are obvious top favorites, this one is down the ladder for me, but I still dig it, man.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great summary.
So anyway, that is our episode on Head, Chest, or Foot from Less Talk, More Rock, and several other releases, which I talked about like ages ago on this episode. Thank you again so much to Sue from War on Women. That was wonderful of you to come on the show and hang out and talk about how to clean everything and touring. If anybody out there listening does not know War on Women, I will shame you publicly here and now, because you are missing out on clearly one of the raddest bands out there, saying the most, hands down. So definitely go check out War on Women. Go find Sue on Twitter, and we will see you next time. So thank you so much for listening. And if you want to email us, propagandapod@gmail.com, Instagram @propagandapod, Twitter @propagandapod. Check you later.
Hey, gentlemen, this is Elliot in Des Moines, Iowa, and I love How to Clean Everything because it is the first Propaganda record I heard, and Propaganda is perhaps the most special band to me, but mostly it's because it's neat to think about a band who essentially did a certain style better than just about every other band at that time, but you listen to it now knowing that they have so much more to do and so much more to grow and so much more to offer. And it's just incredibly cool to think of a band that already was like, well, we're better than basically everybody. Oh, also, we're going to end up being better than, like, literally everybody. Not just, like, better than, I don't know, NoFX and Strung Out, but better than, like, U2 and the Beatles. So that's why I like How to Clean Everything.
Yeah, back when I heard the record in 1994 or 5, when I was 15 or 16, How to Clean Everything was, like, mind-blowing and amazing. And taught me how to sort of take my anger at my parents or school or whatever bullshit I was experiencing in mostly rural Alabama at the time, and I don't know, like, put it into words that I didn't have. However, I'm very happy that they do not
sound like that anymore. I think it's a record that is best sort of left as a footnote at this point. Like, yes, important, but so fucking glad Propaganda does not sound like that anymore, because in hindsight, it's grating and actually sounds like shit in a lot of ways. But it's important. Thanks, y'all. Have a great one.
Hi, Keith. My name is Alejandro Ortagaste from Evanston or Chicago, Illinois. Quick call. I've been listening to Propaganda since high school, and it was How to Clean Everything. That was my first record. Why it means something to me is even from the beginning of Andy Manifesto, which is a favorite one. I'd even go with the first three songs there, up to Head, Myth, Muscle, Etiquette. It's message, it's music, and it's also, it seems true, you know, they, unlike other bands, never seemingly sold to a larger label. There's a few instances of groups like that, like maybe Fugazi, who was another favorite of mine. But when you listen to the songs and you listen to them timelessly and over again, the message rings true, and the trio is probably my more favorite incarnation of the group, and How to Clean Everything, and also the split, the I Spy split, two of my favorites. Let's Talk More Rock is also pretty happy, but my favorite songs would be those three at the beginning, and I would also have to go with Who Will Help Me Bake This Bread. Now, cheers to you and your group out there. Thank you for keeping it alive.